Advocacy. I'm well. How are you?
Just if you're ready, when you think the over under is for us removing our mask.
I'll go, yeah, I'm on now. Want to make sure you were there.
We think September, we'll take these off and meet here. You're guessing that. January.
My brother-in-law's a doctor, and he thinks that a lot of normal activity will fully resume like 8 weeks.
Well, when it came out, like Ezekiel. Fauci said it was based around Thanksgiving of 20. Because once it gets warm, I'm having difficulty breathing. I feel like it's coming back. So when you schedule to get your first shot,
I got my second one yesterday.
get mine on Thursday.
It's a good feeling.
You feel a little bluish for a little bit yesterday?
Yesterday I was fine. Today I just woke up.
You feel like gorgeous. Yeah, it just shows that your body's reacting to it.
Hey, Sanjeev, good evening. I'm well. How are you? How you feeling, Jess?
Doing all right.
Lovely. Good evening.
Better. Last night you must be off. Huh?
Take care. Yeah. Good. Good. How are you doing? Diane, joining us
Zoom.
on Zoom.
I think she was gonna join us.
Fabulous.
She's still coming.
We begin?
Yes, we get it. It's Diana.
She is.
Okay. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and electronically forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall and remotely at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on the Township website. Please all stand to salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible.
liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Miss Megan,
Here.
Miss Soiglo,
Here,
Mr. Wasserman,
Here.
Mr. Vinayak, Mayor Prupus.
Here.
Thank you.
I would like to advise that the new business item zoning accessory use revisions originally included on the posted agenda has been removed for discussion this evening. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as revised?
Motion.
May I have a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Good evening, Millburn Township. The Environmental Commission met on April 13th. They continued the discussion on gas-powered leaf blowers and also discussed moving ahead with advocating for an open space fund in Millburn Township. Thanks to the hard work of Mr. Molman and our DPW staff, our town has collected, recycled, and diverted almost 4,000 pounds, 2 tons of food waste from our municipal solid waste garbage since the project began in February 1st. We are currently in the middle of Bike Week. A huge thanks to the organizers, Jennifer Duckworth and Jorge Mastropetro, for organizing the week's activities. You can find out more about it on the website. On April 12th, the two-way traffic investigation subcommittee met with Essex County engineering and traffic officials who gave us the go-ahead with continuing to plan for two-way traffic on Millburn and Essex. Our traffic consultant is preparing a report, which we hope to present to the Township Committee on June 6th. On April 9th, the DPW redevelopment subcommittee met with Mr. Joe Marizidi, and Mr. Marizidi is on the agenda tonight to discuss the redevelopment path. The sign ordinance review subcommittee met yesterday, April 19th, and we're underway with that process. We will be putting out a survey in the coming weeks to the business owners to get their feedback. The Taylor Park Entrance Revitalization Subcommittee is meeting at the gazebo tomorrow at 11:30 to start discussing ideas. Mike Stotts, the managing director of the Paper Mill Theater, will be joining us on the subcommittee. The next PSAB meeting is on April 28th at 7 p.m. And there is an immediate need for our food pantry in town, canned vegetables and shelf milk of all varieties and all mixed canned vegetables. And you can donate by dropping off goods at Millburn Town Hall, at Green Nectar Market during regular business hours, or at 15 Cypress Street, Millburn, anytime. And that are all my reports for tonight. Committeewoman Eglo, would you like to start? Do you have any reports?
Good evening. I don't have any reports, but I just want to thank everyone in Town Hall and particularly my 4 Township Committee members for their kindness in thinking of me after my surgery. You have all made me feel so special, and I'm really part of a amazing family. So I just want to thank you all, and I'm feeling fine. Just wasn't up to coming out this evening.
You are very welcome, and
Good to know
it's good to hear that you're feeling
that
good.
you're well.
Yeah.
Committeewoman Miggins, would you like to report?
We did have, last evening I was on the library meeting, and they're talking about, so I referred them to Mr. McDonald. They're talking about doing the renovations on the project of the building, and that could cause the library to be closed July, August, September, October. So one of the things I suggested that we might do, if that perchance did happen, is to see if there would be any like vacant storefronts, or maybe like an Annie says, if that we could do almost like a pop-up library for our students, especially if it looks as if September, everybody gets back online and we'll be going back to school. I think it's important that we have our library. We do have reciprocity with other libraries, but I think so many of our students, especially I've been in the library right after middle school lets out, you know, a lot of them are getting tutored or they're studying. It's quite lively and fun. So the whole idea is to renovate this library to have a special section for the students. But my concern was, oh my gosh, what are we, we've been closed down for so long, and then to close it again. Although the director would, want to make sure the work gets done quickly and right away, but you know how these things happen. So I suggested that he call Mr. McDonald and see if there was some way we could maybe speak to some business owners in town, that if they haven't rented their spaces, or if they're vacant, or they're deciding what to do with it for just a little, couple of months, goodwill, as it were. So that I thought was pretty important, especially for our town and our library, which it's an integral part of all the children around here. So
You can do phase in.
I think with the way the work goes, they can. I think it just has, it's like one of the, it's like when you're renovating the house, I guess, I don't know. You just have to do it all at one time. So they do have the funding for it.
Yeah.
So I think that they just want to try and they're doing lots of good things. So That was just a bit of a, oops, especially as we get back online in September. So I said, call Mr. McDonald, see what he can do.
We spoke.
Oh, perfect, perfect. And I was contacted by the HPC, Historic Preservation Committee, before I came in. Apparently, there are some more grants that they could possibly be writing for. One has to do with the DAR, which is the Daughters of the American Revolution. They want to apply for a $10,000 grant that would make a crosswalk between the parcel house and the cemetery. And if they had a crosswalk, then they could have, you know,
It's a good idea.
kids to go visit it and make it part of an educational process. And then there's also some monies, I think $500,000 or so that they could, some urban grants that they could apply for, and thinking again, partially to finish off the parcel house and something to do with the Coral Hartshorn Arboretum. So stay tuned for that. They, I think we could get Barton to write those grants for us and see if we had any success with them.
Excellent.
Sounds good. Are you complete?
The sign ordinance you talked about, so we're good. Great.
All right, fabulous. Deputy Mayor Osterman?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple items. So for Explore Millburn, our new executive director will be starting on May 3rd, and we're very excited to have Steve Grillo join us and have his leadership. Also, for Mother's Day, please get ready for an amazing Mother's Day celebration with Explore Millburn in Millburn Short Hills, set for Saturday, May 8th. We'll be hosting what we're calling Fame, a full day of fitness, art, music, and entertainment. Fitness will be in Taylor Park starting at 9 a.m. We have a Mother's Day art project. We have live music between 4 and 9 p.m. We're going to have circus performers wandering the township, you know, for the kids, and it should be a really exciting and fun day of celebrating, you know, Mom's Day. So please look for our information that we're going to be releasing in the coming week. Also, I've been working on a project. Well, I should say the township is looking at moving the bus stop, which is currently on the corner of Main Street and Millburn Avenue. And we're looking at seeing if it's feasible to move the bus stop towards the end of the block, which would be across from Taylor Park. And the thinking is that would free up about 4 or 5 parking spaces. It would offer the restaurants there, which is, you know, Moonshine, Miss Lynn's, Vinny's Pizza, Rocking Joe's. It would offer them potentially an opportunity to have parklets. And certainly after the summer, you know, net we would gain a few, you know, very needed parking spots. So we're working on that, and Mr. McDonald's and Committeewoman Miggins and actually Committeewoman Eglo, we've all been kind of working on this, and I think it'll be a really net gain for the township to have extra parking spaces and help those restaurants, you know, get some needed outside space for the summer.
Great. Committeeman Vinayak?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one report. Finance Subcommittee met and has been meeting, as you know, weekly. Finally, we got to a situation where we have animal control on the resolution today. Terrific job. Just to give you a little background on it, we have been serving 4 of the township for their animal control. And we have been charging them a couple thousand or a few $1,000s a year. And we have 2 full-time employees, and their operating cost here is in a few $100,000. So we are now looking at our options of what we can do to keep the service or better the service and bring down our cost on that. So again, Very good job. Thank you so much.
Great. Mr. McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a few brief updates. One is the township has conducted 2 information sessions regarding the flex parking and the potential for its removal. We have recently put out a survey regarding flex parking, which can be found on the township's website and was also emailed through our Swift 911 system. Just a couple comments on the survey, just to add some clarification and maybe some points that we've received some questions on. And I think that first and foremost, as many may realize or understand, we have been through this process back in 2018, in which we did put out a pretty comprehensive survey to the public on this topic. And we attempted to go out to bid. Those bids, one was deficient and had to be thrown out, and the other was over the estimated price. So in an effort to sort of succinctly get to the answer of what the public's thoughts were on the flex parking and whether it should be removed, we've sort of boiled it down to a yes or no question. I understand that there's some questions and concerns with the information that was provided in that survey. And so I'm just going to offer a bit of justification and maybe a ray of hope in this, is that one is we didn't provide the estimated price for a reason, in that this will, if the committee decides to go forward with this project, it will bid publicly. And by putting out that number, we can potentially pigeonhole ourselves into receiving a bid in that amount. Going through the local public contracts law, we are required to accept the lowest responsible bidder. And so we want to make sure that the process is competitive and that it's not, again, swayed by public information that's put out there, which would be done if we had put an estimate out there. I understand that as our community attempts to make a decision about whether they feel this is a path that they want to go, that this is important information, but there are also important reasons why we're not necessarily doing that. In terms of an understanding of what this project might look like, and we have said this as we went through this before, and then in some of the information that we've provided more recently, is that we are looking, if this were to be done, it would be a 3 to 4 week project. It would require the removal of the concrete between the roadway and the bollards. The gray basalt pavers that are currently there would remain, and a curb facing would be placed there for a traditional parking space that you see throughout the rest of town. Drainage that's currently at the edge of the flex parking area would have to be pulled back against the curb, and the road would have to be resurfaced, crowned, and made sure that the drainage would work. That is the crux of the project. There is no return of the right-hand lane. There is no other modifications to other elements of complete streets or anything like that. This is simply the removal of the raised parking spaces, the raised concrete spaces between the street and the bollards. So, but we're going to continue, the ray of hope is that we'll continue to evaluate the survey, and if adjustments need to be made, we will make those. Certainly people can continue to put in their submissions, and any revision to that survey will be communicated. But as of right now, again, the sense was to get to the answer of yes, no, as succinctly as possible. My other update, and the mayor and Committeewoman Miggins have been reporting on several different subcommittees, subgroups that now all members of the committee are involved in, whether that's the Taylor Park Gateway, and these are sort of spinoffs of the downtown area vision plan, or groups that are looking to tackle the larger elements that have been expressed and described and reported on by Perkins Eastman and through the downtown area vision plan process. Taylor Park Gateway, DPW redevelopment, business advocacy, and two-way traffic circulation. We've now added subcommittee pages to the township's website, so that we, again, hope that the public will continue to follow along, continue to be engaged in this process. We've also added subcommittee pages for the sign ordinance and the zoning code reexamination. So again, in an effort to keep everyone as up to date as possible and as informed as possible, we'll continue to update those pages. But certainly I encourage everyone to utilize our website. It is robust. It has a lot of information on it. I also encourage people to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, sign up for Swift 911, sign up for Notify Me. We have a multitude of ways and mediums that we communicate with our public. And we just hope that for everyone that you stay engaged, stay informed, because of all of those efforts that are being made to do so.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Well-
Mr. Falcon?
No report now.
Okay. Mr. Molman? Okay, tonight we have two presentations and we're going to start with Julian Nyman. You would like to bring her on and she's going to talk about the recycling program. Hi, Julia. You're on mute.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mayor Krupis and Township Committee members for having me. I'm Julia Neiman, a sophomore at Millburn High School, and I'm going to be explaining and updating a little bit about the recycling challenge that I initiated at Millburn Township in partnership with Trex. So I've always been interested in reducing plastic waste. So when I heard about this program, I thought it would be a great opportunity to both reduce the amount of plastic bags that go into the landfill with the benefit of a bench provided to our community. So this program, sponsored by Trex, requires that the township collect a minimum of 500 pounds of plastic film and bags within a 6-month period in order to receive a bench for our community. So pictured on the right is an image of what the 48-inch bench will look like. The only aspect that might differ from the picture example is the color which our township can choose. So this program started on March 15th and will continue up until September 15th of this year. On this slide, I included some examples of items that can be collected for this program. Some of the key items that we get a lot of include grocery bags, bubble wrap, and plastic shipping envelopes. Where does the plastic go? So I've mentioned that Trex is sponsoring this challenge. So Trex is a company that manufactures outdoor materials such as decking and railing using recycled materials. Each deck made by Trex contains about 140,000 recycled plastic bags and film, such as those that our residents are collecting. Pictured on the right is an example from the Trex website of what their sustainable decking looks like. This is just a list of the program activities that I completed during the first month of running the program. So the first thing I did was register the township program with Trex, and then I acquired bins from Trex and placed them in the township locations. Upon starting the program, I collected and packaged up plastic daily from the 4 township bin locations. And then I also stored the overflow of plastic in our family garage and transported that over time to Home Depot. As well, I reported weekly stats to the township and reported monthly stats to Trex. In the first month of the program, we collected 746 pounds of plastic, which is well beyond the 6-month 500-pound goal, and also averages out to 186 pounds per week, and this far exceeds my expectations. And I am beyond thankful that we have residents who care so much about the program and continued their support consistently throughout the month. So the image on the left shows the plastic only from the library being put in our car. And the image on the right shows the overflow of plastic that we had in our garage. So during the first month, the residents dropped off their plastic at one of the 4 locations, so King's, Library, the high school, and Town Hall. I, along with family members, went to pick up and record the poundage of the bags collected from these 4 locations. Because there were so many bags of plastic, we would drop off as much as we could at Home Depot, but inevitably there was excess we had to store in our garage that could not fit in our car. And from Home Depot, the plastic goes to Trex, which, as I mentioned before, they use for their outdoor materials. Currently, the residents are now dropping off their plastic at one central location, DPW. So this makes the program much more efficient. And then as well, DPW serves as storage before the bags can be taken to Home Depot. And then same as the first flow, once the bags go to Home Depot, they're taken to Trex. So just some final thoughts. The residents are continuing to overwhelmingly support the program, which is amazing. Other towns with similar results have extended their program beyond the 6-month duration. And one example I found was Berkeley Heights, and they have collected 8 tons of plastic and 20 benches to date, which is amazing. If resident support continues, we may also want to consider extending our program as well. Finally, I just wanted to give a special thanks to Mayor Prupis for initially approving the program, Mr. Woolman for all his support, and Ms. Camp for working on the communications. Thank you.
Julia, that is amazing. And thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, our next presentation tonight is the right-of-way permit Verizon Wireless project. And Bryn Klein is the Verizon representative to provide an overview of the project.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right, great. I have just a brief presentation here to go through the 6 right-of-way permit applications that were submitted. I just want to talk just a little bit about small cells and what exactly is in our proposal. I hope I can do as good a job as Julia just did, and kudos to her for a great program and presentation. So if you're not familiar with small cells, basically small cells work hand in hand with the larger traditional macro cellular sites that we are used to. The purpose of the small cells, and generally they are under 50 feet in height, and they are meant to offload or provide additional capacity for our larger macro structures. They can also provide coverage in some of our hard to reach and geographically challenged areas where topography may prevent the signal from getting into some tough to reach places. Again, the macro provides the umbrella coverage, which basically is our wide reaching signal, to which the current industry standard is 4G LTE. What we're talking about tonight specifically is small cells. And again, the purpose is to provide some capacity and some additional coverage. Small cells by definition are under 6 cubic feet in antenna and under 28 cubic feet in the appurtenances and cabinets. Small cells, 4G small cells also will pave the way for the next generation of wireless technology, which I'm sure you've heard 5G as the big buzzword in the wireless telecommunications industry right now. And the reason why these are important to us, these 6 right-of-way permits that we've submitted, they're based on data capacity demands. So just some interesting stats here that we've seen tremendous growth in data usage, over the last decade. Most people, according to these stats, have more than one connected wireless device, which is quite interesting. So into the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about tonight. So we've proposed 6 locations for small cell, shown on the map attached here. We've got 3 of them along Brookside Drive, and then 1 at 165 Old Short Hills Road, 1 at 480 White Oak Ridge, and 1 at 99 White Oak Ridge. What we are gaining here from these 6 applications would be the color splashes that you're seeing in purple. So that will be the coverage gained. And then again, we will also be offloading our macro facilities and existing coverage, which you see in yellow. That's where our best and strongest signal is. Some of the areas where you don't see the yellow, the signal is a little bit more challenged there. So we're basically trying to fill in some of the gaps. This slide is showing you the basic aesthetics of what a small cell is. So the main components of the small cell, going from bottom to top on the image that would be on your left, we have a separate power meter. The box that's maybe midway or so up the pole is the cabinet that's mounted directly to the pole that houses our radios and ancillary equipment. And then the cylindrical device at the top is the actual antenna. The total height of these would be 43 feet. The top of the pole would be 38 feet 6 inches, which generally matches the existing overhead utility poles that are in the right-of-way. On the right, this is a typical and not specific to Millburn, but this is what a typical 4G small cell would look like. Again, you have the antenna at the top. Midway down, you have the equipment box, and then the meter down below. Notable in this application is all 6 of these locations are actually located in county right-of-way. However, we do need a right-of-way permit from the township. Again, all of those applications have been submitted and awaiting approval. So I am open to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Do any committee members have any questions for Brian?
Is this just for Verizon or it'll work for other services as well? Or
Yes, this is specific to Verizon.
So for T-Mobile and AT&T, we'll have to put more antennas?
That is dependent on what their needs are. I certainly can't speak to what their plans are, but these are specific to Verizon, yes. There is a possibility that there could be shared poles. Like their equipment could be co-located on existing poles if their needs align with ours, but we are unsure of that at this point.
That was my next question. Is there any kind of equipment out there that can be shared by all major phone services?
There are systems out there that do that. However, what we are proposing here, interestingly enough, is out in Brookside Drive. I mean, there is, not a very good signal out there. So this is a good and quick way for us to do that. A third-party provider would technically need to be involved to do something like a shared antenna system. And they would need to have all of the interest generated from all of the local carriers, which, I don't know that exists at that point. I don't know that there is a need for that. Verizon has a specific need that we are trying to address.
Mr. Klein, this is Committeewoman Miggins. Thank you for your presentation. I have a few questions for you. Did I read correctly that the telephone poles have to be opposite the utility poles? They have to be on the different sides of the street?
In the cases where we cannot use the existing utility poles, that is our first preference. However, the utility provider has a number of different criteria that has to be met in order for us to use their poles. In certain instances where there is a overhead power line or a high tension line, those are not compatible for co-location. The utility just does not allow that. So we need to install a new pole in that case. We can't just install a new pole on that line in a lot of cases, just because of we're also putting something aerially, so we need to be separated enough from the power lines in order to access our own equipment.
So I drove by the White Oak Ridge Road. Did you, both White Oak Ridge Road and Old Short Hills Road, have people that live in these homes at these addresses? Have they been noticed that you want to do this?
They have not been noticed, no.
Okay, that's a problem. Also, the poll that you're presenting on your computer this evening is different than the poll that's sitting currently in front of 99 White Oak Ridge Road. Are you adding on to it? That's not what the poll looks like and that happens to be across from the Hartshorn Elementary School. So that looks totally different than what's sitting there today. It's just a regular poll. So is there additions to these polls?
No, ma'am. The only thing that we are putting, so whether or not there is a new pole being placed or we are attaching to an existing pole, the three pieces of our equipment that are the main components is the antenna. Again, this box that's about, maybe a third of the way up, I should say. And then the antenna, or excuse me, the power meter, which sits about here.
Well, that's not what the poll looks like at 99 White Oak Ridge. I personally think that the homeowner should be noticed if you're looking to put utility poles in front of their homes, especially 165 Old Short Hills Road. That 3-acre piece of property, Mr. Welch lives there, and I'm sure he'd like to know that you're trying to put some pole in front of his home.
Yes, we are open to we're open to doing that. We're open to doing some communication with the public about the work.
I think before we do anything.
Yeah. Hi, this is Deputy Mayor Wasserman.
Hello, sir.
Wouldn't it be in our municipality's interest, in our residents' interest, if we allowed this only if we could ask you to also share these polls with other providers? I mean, what if we allowed you to do this and then T-Mobile came along and said, you know what, you can let Verizon do this. What if we want 6 polls or 10 polls? I mean, isn't it in our interest to allow, maybe eventually allow you to do this, but to say, you know what, you have to be good sharers, because it's in our residents' interest not to have 100 polls, but maybe to have, fewer polls where you work it out with the other providers so that all of our residents have great coverage with less polls.
Yeah, I think you might be overshooting the need a little bit. So we're certainly not looking anywhere near 100 polls. We're looking at 6. Something that is notable is, what we're proposing here does fit in with Township Ordinance Chapter 4-2. So there's nothing in here that runs afoul of your adopted ordinance.
Yeah, I didn't mean literally 100 polls, but in reality, what if T-Mobile wanted to add their 4 polls and then,
Yeah, but I would, excuse me if I interrupted you, but T-Mobile is welcome to attach to our polls. So these polls would be owned by Verizon Telephone, which is a public utility. And all they would need to do would be to submit an application to Verizon Telephone to attach to the pole. They have existing agreements in place with Verizon Telephone. So if they wanted to share this pole with us, they are more than welcome to submit an application. We're certainly not standing in the way of that.
And that would be stipulated in our agreement?
I'm, and Mr. Wasserman, is there any history? Have you tried this before in our town? So we should know? Or,
We have not. I think your ordinance is relatively new. So this is our first application that we're making under the ordinance.
okay, so as Mr. Wasserman said, even I'm of the same opinion. If T-Mobile or AT&T want to later put in their equipment on this pole, they shouldn't be going to you. It should all be for the township. So I would prefer also to be having a shared services for all the town. Shorters shouldn't be just Verizon friendly, it should be all the services friendly. If
Yep.
you're going that route.
Well, I appreciate that. I did, and I'm not sure if all of you are familiar, but there is FCC Order 18-133, which governs these type of deployments. So, any conditions would need to be within the spirit of that. Again, any future carriers that would like to share this pole with us are more than welcome to submit an application.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know, just quickly, do we know who owns the conservation zone land on Brookside? There's 3 properties, Brookside Drive at Glen, north of Brookside. Do we know who owns that land?
Essex County.
Essex County. And then 480 White Oak Ridge, we own the town.
480.
I think so. That's what says Millburn. I pulled up Millburn owns, because I looked at what was more concerning to me, quite frankly, were the homeowners being noticed,
Mhm.
and they weren't. I have a problem with that.
Well, you can certainly ask Mr. Klein to notice them
I think-
prior to any furtherance of the application.
Mhm. Yes, please.
Hi, this is Committeewoman Eglo. May I speak? Do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I want to say thank you again also for the presentation. I think we have to look at this, that this is for the benefit of our residents we have very poor cell phone coverage in many areas of this town. And if T-Mobile or another company wants to hook onto your poles, they would apply to Verizon, but they would have to rent some space from you, right? Because this is your capital outlay. This is Verizon is paying to do this. So I think we also want to remember the benefit is to our residents who there are many short spots in this town. And it's not changing the look. All you're going to see is a box and something on top. So I think noticing the resident is fair. I would be very surprised. I can't speak for anybody, but I would be very surprised if a resident who does not have good cell phone service would object to this. And more people who I am finding surprisingly of all generations do not have landlines any longer. So I think we have to remember what is the overall arching goal of this. Thank you.
Yeah, she raised a great point. And especially in the age of, all of the remote work that's happening, Millburn does have some challenges in terms of terrain that make some of our efforts here to get a seamless wireless signal in the town difficult. So we're trying to fill in these holes to provide the best coverage we can. We welcome providing some notice. We would certainly be willing to do that prior to any construction efforts.
And just lastly, if T-Mobile wanted to hook onto your pole, they would have to rent the space from you because this is your capital outlay, correct?
Yes, that's accurate, but it is all regulated by the BPU. So it's if we were to install a pole in the county right of way, there are procedures in place where shared use of a utility pole that process is in place.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Klein? Okay, so Mr. Klein, please notice the residents and we will continue this discussion. Okay. The committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda?
I do.
Okay.
I do. This is discussing 21-117, authorized advertisement of bids for the crossing guard service. So having read through Mr. McDonald's report about the crossing guards, clearly I wasn't on the township committee when this had been discussed and then COVID hit. And so now we're back discussing the privatization of the crossing guards. So I'm a bit confused because we're not going to have cost savings. There's 30 crossing guards currently. Currently, there's 30, right? Over half of them live in town, over half. And I think that says something when you have, and most of them are seniors, but when you have people that are working in town, they're paying taxes in town, they live in town, they spend their money in town. And I don't know why we would be privatizing this when over half of them are townspeople. And clearly, every time something gets privatized, somebody loses, and it's not going to be the company that we're hiring out to. It's going to be the people that are getting paid. So for me personally, I then started doing some research. Of course, I like to do research. How many guards do we have on staff? Currently the police, our police officers, our fine police officers, are at the high school and at the middle school. I think Horace Giambattista does a great job of keeping an eye on all that traffic and keeping it moving. So those aren't the crossing guards in some major spots, but they are in other spots. And I know that there have been some spots where they've removed crossing guards. And I also know there's a big longevity with these crossing guards. So for me personally, I think that even if you were to have privatized it, you would still have the police in all these different places. They don't get benefits. They don't get paid if they don't put the hours in. They only get paid when they work. They work about 15 hours a week. I'm not quite clear on why the Board of Ed doesn't fund it since we are crossing I don't know. I don't know if there's a law. I don't know. Or why we haven't talked to somebody at the Board of Ed about this. I know that just from a mother's perspective and a safety perspective, Tom Pisano was crossing my kids. He's been at his post, I think, I don't know how many years, 20 years maybe. So I always felt quite comfortable that I could walk my daughter down to Hobart Avenue and she could go straight down and there would be Tom to get her under the bridge, to get her to Glenwood School. And I think there's a safety thing there. And, these kids grow up with these crossing guards and the parents feel comfortable with them. I don't know if we'll retain those crossing guards. I don't know if they'll cut the pay on these crossing guards. I don't know. You know me, I'm for the little guy always. So I think, these guys are trying to make extra money. They're living in town. And I don't know. I know that sometimes they say, well, maybe somebody doesn't show up. We also have two people that graciously give out tickets all over town that start earlier that could also step in to be crossing guards as well. And I don't know, have we run it by the Board of Ed? Have we run it by the PTOs? Are they comfortable with the guards getting privatized? Has anyone talked to any of these people? Those are my questions.
Okay. Would you like me to respond?
Sure.
Okay. So all understandable and certainly good questions, committee woman. The privatization of crossing guards, as I stated in my report, was not necessarily to have a cost savings. And part of the reason for that is because the current crossing guards are in the bid spec. It says that they should be hired by the company and at the rate that they're currently at, which is in other communities that have gone down this route, Westfield, Somerville, Ridgewood, they have similar provisions in their contracts that would say that those that are currently on the payroll are then brought on by that company. Because again, we're having a difficult time hiring crossing guards and the process that we need to go through to do that. It's not an easy job to find people to do. And so therefore, it makes sense for not only the company that would be coming in, but for us as well. And to your point about, those individuals who are residents and are trying to, earn some additional money, it makes sense for them to take on those individuals. The savings from this contract wouldn't be, dollar for dollar. You say, oh, well, if we currently spend $450,000 for crossing guards and we're going to pay 400 under this new contract, that's not necessarily going to be the case. However, where the township would save is in a couple of areas. One is the time and resources that are allocated by the Traffic Bureau and the Millburn Police Department to hire, train, place, find replacement, cover, and whatever else that they do in the administration of the crossing guards would be the responsibility of the private company. Second of all, some savings would then be derived by workers' compensation. We cover all 30 crossing guards, what used to be 36, and that's not as a result of us cutting, it's just as a result of us not being able to hire enough crossing guards to get to the 36. But workers' compensation is also a consideration in those savings.
So let me ask you a couple questions. The Westfield company is a California company.
Correct.
So I don't know how they know who to hire around here, but I haven't spoken to anybody in Westfield about this yet. Workman's comp, don't we have an umbrella policy for workman's comp in our town?
You have a plan that is administered through the Morris County Joint Insurance Fund.
Okay.
That is, and your costs in workers' comp are generally driven by your experience. So the more loss you have, days lost or whatever, the more it drives your cost in workers' compensation.
Okay, so do we have an umbrella policy in this town for workman's comp? And how much do those crossing guards cost us in workman's comp? And have they ever filed any reports with workman's comp?
Ms. Biggins, I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm just giving you some additional viewpoint on the subject.
I can appreciate that. I just look at how much are we saving? And this company that you may put it out to bid that's in California. And yes, they would lock in the current rates for the guards, but then what do we know about the guards that they would hire after that? What would the rates be for those after that? So then does it go to a $12 an hour job instead of a 20 an hour job? And how do we get people for that? We normally do have 36 crossing guards. We are down to 36. We've lost, I think because of COVID issues, one guard unfortunately passed away from COVID, right? So I just think I'd like to do a little more research on it. That's all. I don't think that we should be putting this out to bid till we can do a little more research on it. That's just my feeling on
So
it.
at Committeewoman Megan,
Mhm.
I'd like to give a little backstory here.
Sure.
Because when I first came on the committee in 2019, I sat on the PTOC safety.
Mhm.
And this was the conversation of crossing guards that I had kind of walked into, that had been this long-term parents not feeling that the crossing guards weren't showing up, and that they were so upset, and there was this huge problem of and that there weren't enough crossing guards, and that they were expecting crossing guards to be there and there wasn't. So that year I also founded the PSAB with Jennifer Duckworth and really worked. And one of the major things about that was this crossing guard situation. So this has been a conversation going on now for, a good 4 year, even beyond that, where the parents, so yes, the PTOs are involved, and PTOC safety is involved, and PSAB's involved, and there are a lot of people involved in this conversation that got us to, and representatives of PTOC safety, the assistant chair, the co-chair, reviewed the contract. This conversation has been in motion. It got pulled because of COVID. There was a shortage that had nothing to do with COVID. And with a lot of really dedicated people sitting down together, coming up with a solution, this is the solution that everybody agreed on. And I think it's really important that we get this in place for the fall, for the school. And I think it's important that we go ahead and we do it.
Even I think I support what Mr. McDonald just mentioned. We have to give it to a professional company where they can actually treat this crossing guards, or not crossing guard per se, but this function professionally, whether it's a California company or a New Jersey company, if they have their presence here, I assume there are some people who are working here as well. They could be registered company in California, people register company everywhere, and they start from someplace and come in here. But what Mr. McDonald said, I'm in support of that too. Again, no disrespect to what
No,
you just
no,
said.
we're
I
allowed.
think that's fair point. But 36 down to 30, we don't have 6 guards because we cannot hire. We are relying on police to traffic them, or the traffic police, they will get some time on their hand to do the real work that they've been hired for.
But we
So-
still will have police doing traffic duty. That doesn't
They,
stop.
they will do their duty, but they are not going to manage this function. Is that what it is?
Correct. They're going to manage the contract, but they're not going to be the ones that would have to fill in at spots where crossing guards are missing, because it will be responsibility of the contractor to make sure that those spots are filled.
And can I add, so the parents were getting mad at the principals, and it was like, this crossing guard issue was so huge. So
Well, the principal of Hartshorn does go out every day and helps with the crossing, he's gotten himself certified to do it. That I know.
Mhm.
Because he wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
But the question is, who's doing the training? How's the training going? Wouldn't it be nice to know, how is it working out in Westfield? What is the rate of people not
they
showing up
did
for
that.
things?
They did
Yeah,
a
I'm-
whole analysis.
Yeah,
Mr.
I'm sorry.
McDonald did this. He did a lot of research.
So I'd
into
love
it
to
and
see the
got to this
report.
point.
Well,
All the questions that you asked are fair questions and fair points. I think
and,
if you can just share that with everyone.
yeah, and I think keep in mind too, is that this is an authorization to go out to bid. I can certainly provide additional information to you, Committeewoman Miggins, prior to that bid process. But also, I've had conversations with my counterpart in Westfield, discussed their crossing guard contract with them. Even during the pandemic, when we had to lay our crossing guards off, we had to pay unemployment benefits for a short time, things like that. These were issues that all of those communities that didn't have that had the privatization of crossing guards didn't face. So I could certainly provide you with additional information. But this is an authorization to go out to bid. This is not an award of a contract or anything like that.
And let me just follow up a couple questions. So we do have an assurance that the current crossing guards would not lose any pay, like, they would be at the same rate that they are now?
We have that written into the contract. But we are gonna, in the contract, it'll state that they should hire the current crossing guards. We provide them with a list
Okay,
of those crossing guards and their rate of pay.
and the rate of pay.
Correct.
Okay,
But they
and-
don't have to.
They do not have to. I don't think we can require them to do that, but I think my experience in my discussions with other communities that have gone this route, that's what they have done.
Okay. And also, do we have an assurance that instead that they can find like the extra 6 that we need? I mean, is there
It's a responsibility to
That's
fulfill the
their
contract.
job.
so we're confident that they could, fill out the ranks that we need?
The other thing that they do is they'll take one of those current crossing guards, because again, as I stated before, we are here and we're attempting to hire crossing guards at all times. We have not had that success. So for a company to come in and say, hey, crossing guard that's currently here, we'll pay you $12 an hour to do the job that you're currently receiving $18 to $20 an hour to do, that they'll never be able to fulfill the contract.
How is it that they can hire them and we can't? Where are they doing their advertising that we're not?
Maybe
Good
it's a
question
special
again.
thing.
The
Yeah.
professional, if you ask me, I invest money in different companies. There are other companies who may invest in the same company or may not even find those companies. But I'm good in what I do, and some people are good in what they do. So I think it's the professional company. I understand what you're saying. The fear is there. We can't keep living under fear. We need to.
It's not fear for me,
Yeah.
Sanjeev. It's just, how can they do something that we can't do?
I'll provide you with additional information. We can have
That'd be
this
great.
discussion.
Thank you.
So this is Committeewoman Eglo. So if we approve this, we're going to be going out for the contract, but we're not approving it at this point. So if we just move forward, it just gets us a step closer to make a decision, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think we should move ahead.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the committee on any other consent agenda items?
Mayor, I might just add, if Committeewoman Miggins may vote no on that resolution, you may want to parse that out from the
Okay,
consent
we're
agenda.
still gonna hear, we're gonna open it up to the public
sorry.
before we take a vote on anything, so. Okay. Public comment period is a time for you to state your comments. It is not a dialogue between the public and the township committee. Our contact information is available on the township website, and we welcome your emails. When you are ready to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. At 2.5 minutes, you will hear the buzzer, and we'll have 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. When the second buzzer goes off at the full 3 minutes, your allotted time is over. It is with consensus from the township committee that we will strictly adhere to the 3-minute time limit for public comments, and no person is permitted to yield his or her time to another speaker. Please remember that we are all neighbors and here because we love our town. Please do not disrupt the meeting by making disparaging remarks or by speaking beyond your 3-minute allowed time for public comment. I will advise you with a warning if you're disrupting the meeting. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will state that you're disrupting the meeting and preventing the business meeting from proceeding. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, we will mute you if you are remote, or if you are present, I will call a 5-minute recess in which the township committee will leave the dais and you will be asked to leave the building. We are speaking specifically about consent agenda items at this portion of the meeting. So when you come after you state your name and your address, please identify which consent agenda item you are speaking to, and please stay on point. Thank you. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld, live in Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey. Many of my comments on the consent agenda are based on events that occurred last week. The pay to play, guilty plea, and the federal indictment that arose from the bill list in Orange, New Jersey. So my first set of questions regarding the bill list, Resolution 21-111. Again, I think there's a need for us to have more clarity of what the bills are being paid for, what line items, so we can track them. I think that goes back to the S&W, because one of the issues that a lot of communities are having is the amount of snow removal costs and overtime. I do not know how much overtime was paid because of the extraordinary snow system we had in February. And I think the public should know, if we're going to get hit with a larger bill, by having S&W, we can be able to monitor it. Again, on the bill list, there's different dates and different check numbers. It's been becoming a pattern. I don't know why that is occurring. Is that because of the line items? There's 3 payments. I don't know what these entities are. One is Lexipol, Peters Todd Inc., and the Rogers Inc. Because there's no description, I don't know if they were engineers. I don't know, because they get a good amount of money. At the last meeting, I asked questions about the joint meetings group. We found out that was the water sewer. I think I asked a question about who's their outside counsel. I think that people should understand it, because one of the issues that we're facing when I said pay to play is how many people are putting their noses into the public funds crowd. And that's one of the things that we were looking for. As to the Mott McDonald Service Professional Service Agreement Resolution 21-115, there was a typo in the third whereas clause. I've been told that's been changed. They'll be fixed. But the question is, why isn't the pay to play certification in the agreement attached to the document? Because it's very important that we have the agreements contracts, because we'll be able to pick up points, such as when we had the retention agreement for the attorneys about the arbitration clause. Because they're not attached, we have no way to know and maybe help you. Because I want to thank Councilperson Miggins, because you asked great questions about the telephone wires, and you answered my questions about the privatization of the crossing guards, and I thank you for that. I also want to thank the student for the a shout out for her. I think the public wants to give her a shout out at this time. About the emergency appropriation resolution 21-121. I believe that we confirmed that this is going to fund us through the end of May. When you go to the original temporary appropriation resolution, there were 2 items that are excluded from here that should be disclosed to the public. One was a capital improvement debt service, about $1.8 million, and a $1.5 $1,500 in public assistance. that also, should be part that people understand how much money we have appropriated. Also, it's very important that the CFO prepare to you and that the public, at least quarterly, how much money we've spent, so we understand what percentages were below or above the appropriation. That goes like for the first issue, really the snow removal, because snow removal is becoming an issue. And also because of COVID, what they are. And it's really, I call this as a neutral transparency and keeping accountability.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Huff.
you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to make a comment about the consent agenda? Yes,
Yes,
please.
hi.
Ms. Pasternak.
Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart Avenue. I'd like to start with the crossing guard privatization. I can't say how strongly I agree with Ms. Miggins on this. As a former 8-year founder and running president of the Millburn Special Education Parent Committee, I can't tell you how many parents have said to me through those years how important it was to have those crossing guards there to help aid their children gain their independence. I really would ask you to consider, I understand the business issues, I understand the professionalism, but there are children in this community, approximately in every school district, 20% that are deemed special education in our community. And I really believe that these crossing guards play an important role in their safety, their confidence in attaining independence and getting to school on their own. And I really hope that the points that she raised will be considered strongly. The other question, I actually had the same questions on the bills list, 21-111. So I'll just concur with what Mr. Feld said. On 21-113, the Memorial Trust Fund, I'm really thankful to see that recognition as a survivor family, especially as we're coming on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I'd just like to understand, will this proposed memorial, is this expanding or adding to the memorial at the Short Hills train station? I'm not really clear what it is. And then just how many other of these kind of donation trust funds do we have? What other purposes do they serve? And then how will the monies be used? Who decides how they're used? Are these donations tax deductible? Those are some of my questions around that. In terms of 21-116, I didn't really understand why we're supporting the creation of the local PERS, but maybe that could be explained. And also 21-119, the downtown flood modeling. What is that for? Why are we going out to bid on that? Let me see if I missed something here. Nope, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pasternak. Anybody else?
Nancy Stone, 266 Essex Street. Great questions on the cell phone tower. I agree there's not enough service, but what's the cost benefit if you're going to have this huge monstrosity in front of your house without being noticed? Can't believe that wasn't done. Don't understand why it's not done, but it's just typical how things just slip through the cracks without any type of vetting whatsoever, which is on your shoulders since you're supposed to be in charge. Anyway, with that
Ms.
said,
Stone, please, no disparaging
I-
remarks.
okay, so with
She's
that,
doing a good job.
What?
That's why
so
we
I
brought it
agree
up
with
for the
you.
cell
I think
phone
it's
tower.
great. As far as the privatization of the crossing guards, again, these kids grew up in this town. You would know that because you're pretty
Ms.
relative
Stone,
new.
Please stop saying disparaging remarks.
I'm not
towards
saying, I'm
me.
just saying that you would know that having the history that Maggie has in this community, that I have in this community, that's not disparaging, that's a fact. So the fact of the matter is, I was here when the township had the garbage, they handled the garbage. It is quite different now that when we went privatization of the garbage, there's a big difference than when the town had it. And I can tell you that it's not the same. We have to live with it because that's what we have to, that's what you vote on. Most likely Maggie will be outvoted because many made the decision already, but these kids know they're crossing guards. My children had it at Hartshorn. It's like you just, even I wave to them in the morning when I'm coming to work, that I've seen them all these years. So I can't understand why we can't find 6 crossing guards. You have Indeed, you have retired people in this community. Why can't we find 6 crossing guards? The fact that we're sending it to California, we're a community here that has a resource. Tap into it. I'm sure if through the network, you can find 6 people to fill the spot. it's just awful that we're outsourcing. We outsourced the 911, we outsourced the garbage, now we're doing the crossing guards. How impersonal can you make this town?
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Are there any other comments or some
It's
online?
Mrs. Stone. I'm not Miss Stone.
Sarah? Or Ms. Sherman?
Thank you. Sarah Sherman, 42 Greenwood Drive. Actually, Maggie raised some points about the, I'm sorry, Committeewoman Miggins raised some points about the crossing guard privatization, but I come at it from a slightly different perspective. First of all, I guess I thought that you were going to say there was considerable cost savings. Mr. McDonald says that there is some, but it's not significant. What I would suggest, and I understand why you're doing this, because I do remember seeing ads for crossing guards and you weren't able to hire them. But I would suggest that whatever company you hire, if you decide to do this, that crossing guards are properly vetted by that company. I would want to know if they are fingerprinted, just as teachers and substitutes have to be, and that there would be continuity, that, you know, a child does like to see the same crossing guard, that the child would see the same crossing guard and not a new face every week or every month. So I'm not opposed to it, but I just think that there are considerations other than, you know, a child's maybe preference or attachment to a crossing guard that might be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sherman. Looks like that's all the consent agenda. Okay, we have more consent agenda comments. Ms. Urso?
Dominique Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue. For someone that was a former student that grew up in Millburn from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, I can name all of my crossing guards by heart. And it takes away of the humbleness and childhood experience of knowing everyone where you walk, just like your teachers, if you do this type of mass general hiring. So I disagree, and I hope you keep it the old school way. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, is there anybody that would like to respond to any of the comments? Alex, I'm going to ask you to speak to some of the questions that Ms. Pasternak asked on 21113 about the trust fund.
Sure. So this trust fund is being set up as a result of a current project to create a memorial based on 2 pieces of steel that the township has from the World Trade Center, and to honor the 20th anniversary of this event. The trust fund is dedicated specifically for this purpose, to help fund the memorial that will not be an expansion of any current memorial. I think it was important as we work through this that the memorials that are currently in place stay the way that they are. You know, we currently have one at the Millburn train station, one at the Short Hills train station, and one in Taylor Park. This is slated to be placed at the Essex Green by the Crescent, and a call for artists has been put out. This dedication by riders to establish that fund to receive donations for this purpose. It would be tax deductible. And I think that answers the bulk of her questions.
She also asked if there are any other funds like this.
Yes, there are, but they're established funds that have been in place for a long time. There's a donation trust for the fire department, because they do receive donations as a result of, you know, responding to particular events at people's homes. And so it was established so that those funds would be used for the purpose of things at the fire department. So that is another donation trust that is established. There's also a recreation trust that, but isn't necessarily with donations, but it can receive donations as well.
And who's working on the 9/11 memorial?
Yeah, so we put a small group together, Committeewoman Miggins, myself, Mr. Molman, Lieutenant Fatal from the police department, firefighter Marlon Adams, and Bill Pollock, who is a former police officer, and Chris Strucker.
And Crescent Park, by the way, just because most people don't know that, the name, it's the park across from the train station in Short Hills, across from the Rackets Club. There's a sweet little park right in there.
Great. To 21-116, can you just explain that?
Sure. There is currently legislation in Trenton putting forth the separation of the local and state PERS systems. This was recently done at the PFRS pension. Essentially, what is happening is that the pension systems are mixed between the state and the local portion, and the local portion is well funded, where the state portion has not been funded over the years. And by separating these pensions, it allows for better administration of the local portion, which has been funded, which can help reduce the costs of pensions to municipalities. This is wide support from localities and local municipalities. It's still working its way through Trenton, but I think that the support of something like this is the township supporting the reduction in costs for these types of for the pension system to help it be better funded. So.
Okay. And lastly, can you just describe 21-119?
Yeah, so we had actually discussed this last year a bit, in which the township had gone through a flood reduction study of the Rahway River as it runs through the downtown area. This was a report, if you may recall, about the potential mitigation projects that could help with reduce flooding in the downtown area. Two of the larger things that had come up in that report were the footer building as well as the Millburn Avenue Bridge. This particular modeling sort of takes all of that a step further, in that a floodplain currently goes through downtown Millburn into Taylor Park, and certainly the floodway follows the river. It also is on the east branch of the Rahway River as well. This modeling is meant to take a topographical 2D model of the flood plain and floodway to establish if it is still the same as it was when it was propagated in the 70s. And so I think there's a degree of necessity as the township continues to look through the downtown area vision plan and what the future of downtown Millburn looks like in terms of this floodway and floodplain and how buildings can be built and things like that. It's important to understand what this floodplain and floodway is doing currently.
Okay, and then I have 3 more requests. If you can just address the checks that Mr. Feld asked what they were, if you could just and if you can ask him if you don't.
No, I got it.
Okay, great, perfect. And just a general comment, because we've had a discussion about the bills list, and going forward, we are going to make some adjustments to it. So if you could just,
We're working on it, yes.
right. So can you just explain that and address what the 3 checks are?
Okay. Peters Todd is a landscaping company. That's where we take brush and things like that. Rogers Group is a consultant that assists the township in its accreditation process for its police department. Lexipol is a another consultant, which we've been using to update the rules and regulations and SOGs of the Millburn Fire Department, which have not been updated since for a long time. Let's put it that way.
So going forward, we are going to have a description.
Yeah, so currently how the township does its bills list is that we actually put in invoice numbers so that it's searchable for us. It helps eliminate duplicate payments, things like that. However, we're gonna shift our process so that we can provide an additional detail or level of detail with regard to that, which would break it down by line item in the budget and a brief description. And some of those descriptions might not always be sort of understandable, but as you know, Mr. Feld and others in the public, you know, things that you have additional questions on, you can always Oprah and we'll provide the backup for that.
Right, or we can talk about them at our township
Mhm.
committee meeting. So feel free to ask any questions that you'd like. Any of my other committee members have anything they want to respond to the consent agenda public comments? Okay, so I'm gonna pull out.
21-17.
Thank you. I'm gonna pull out 21. We'll vote on that separately. So we'll start with, may I have a motion to approve resolution 21-111 through 21-121, removing 21-117.
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes?
Ms. Delaglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-117?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
No.
Ms. Delaglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tonight, Ms. Miggins is going to present ordinance 2571-21 for final reading.
I present for consideration an ordinance entitled Ordinance 2571-21, an ordinance by the Township of Millburn in the County of Essex, New Jersey, prohibiting the operation of any class of cannabis business within its geographical boundaries and amending Section 604 of the Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance. The purpose of this ordinance is to implement the provisions of the newly adopted New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance and Marketplace Modernization Act, which legalizes a recreational use of marijuana and which permits municipalities to prohibit the operation of marijuana establishments, which would otherwise be permitted to operate within those municipalities, provided that they act to do so within 180 days of the effective date of the act. Tonight is the time set for public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law.
So I declare the hearing open, and just remember that we are going to have 3 minutes for comments. I think we're gonna take, oh, come up. No, you're fine, come up.
This is about the ordinance on the business, right?
On the marijuana.
On the marijuana,
Okay, is this the right time to talk?
about the, yes.
Okay.
about the-
Dear members of the Township Committee.
Please
I'm
state your
just-
name and address.
Yeah, my name's Michael Pretty. I live at 461 Wyoming Avenue. I also am the director and the founder of Pretty Learning Academy on 266 Essex Street. I'm just here to voice my opposition to any kind of business that's related to cannabis. I've submitted a letter here. I've been here for 25 years. Unfortunately, I've seen situations with cannabis with kids. It affects their learning. It's taken them down to a path of, not being, just the horrible situations that things happen, and addiction and depression, schizophrenia, to just name a few things. So I'm really, really against, any operation of any cannabis business here. I don't know who to submit this to or a letter.
You can give it to Mr. Molman and he will.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Ms. Pretty.
Ms. Lieberberg. You want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I just, Jackie Lieberberg, 36 Kilmer Drive. I just wanted to say earlier about the crossing guards that I sat in numerous meetings and also share my support for the outsourcing of them. It was, I could just say that there was countless times that I was,
Mayor,
that-
Mayor, I'm just going to interrupt you because we are doing the public hearing right now for ordinance 2571.
I'm sorry, I had my hand raised earlier.
No,
That's
I'm
fine.
so sorry, but if you.
That's fine.
Come
That's
back for
fine.
public comment at the end of the
Thank
meeting. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Cosgrove, can we bring Mr. Cosgrove on? He's not.
Trying this again. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, okay. I think I wasn't fully plugged in on this side. David Cosgrove, 99 Oakview. I did want to speak on this ordinance and basically echo the same sentiments the gentleman a moment ago had. So I do appreciate you folks and Maggie, committee woman Miggins, I appreciate you putting forth this. So I do think it's an important thing not to have these facilities in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this ordinance before we vote? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, wait, we have, oh, sorry, we have Miss Owalabi.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Oyewolabi, 46 Maple Street in Melbourne. I am echoing the same sentiment that the last two gentlemen stated regarding me being against any running of cannabis around our children. You know, I have 3 kids in the school system. We have over 4,000 to 5,000 children in our school district, and I'm fully 100% against this. I just wanted to share my opinion.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are done now.
I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law.
May I have a second?
Second.
No, 2 seconds.
I am second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Stahl Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm going to refer to Deputy Mayor Wasserman to present ordinance 2572-21.
Thank you, Mayor. I present for consideration an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2572-21, ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 7 Traffic, Section 7-29 speed limits on the revised general ordinances of the Township of Millburn. Ordinance revision to reduce the speed limit on Millburn Avenue between Wyoming Avenue and the Maplewood Township border from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour for improved safety for motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists while traveling in the township. This revision will bring consistency to the entire length of Millburn Avenue in the Township of Millburn. to have a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. This is a discussion that's been going on literally for years, I think. And I think that it would be a great benefit to the township to slow traffic down. That area is a speedway, and it's been a source of danger, for years. And I think it would be a great thing for the township to do this, and I'm fully support it.
Okay, I declare the hearing open if anyone wants to make a comment. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on the final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed in accordance with the law.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Ball Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Once again, I'm going to refer to Deputy Mayor Wasserman to introduce ordinance 2574-21.
Yeah, I would like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2574-21, capital ordinance of the Township of Millburn in the County of Essex, New Jersey, authorizing the making of various public improvements and acquisitions in, by, and for the township, appropriating therefore the sum of $1,624,000, $1,624,700, and providing that such sum so appropriated shall be raised from the capital improvement fund of the township. So these are capital improvements to the township. Many of them have been discussed, but I don't know. Alex, do you want to provide an overview of some of the capital that we'd be providing to do these,
Sure.
some of the jobs?
Be happy to. So these capital improvements vary from fire department, Department of Public Works, police department, engineering, as well as some general capital items. In this particular ordinance, which is a capital improvement fund, which is the cash side of those of our capital ordinance, the police department will be getting things such as body cameras, which are going to be mandated by June 1st, radio improvements, a Windows server. There will be a partial replacement of the fire department's tower ladder, which is a big truck and a big expense, but we'll be doing that over a few years. There will be 2 dump trucks for the Department of Public Works that are 25 plus years old. And there is going to be money appropriated for the streetscape and planter project with the tree planters, as well as lots of road improvements, close to 50,000 square yards of micropaving, as well as multiple reconstructions of roadways, as well as a lot of drainage and sanitary and storm sewer improvements in various particular areas of the township.
Thank you. So these are all direct investments in our township.
Correct.
This includes Troy Drive.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
And it includes beautiful solar trees. Anyway, are we ready to?
Yep.
Yeah. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, May 18th, 2021.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Ball Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving along to old business. The first topic is business advocacy zoning regulations update. Mr. McDonald, can you give us an update, please?
Yes, Mayor. So the township is continuing to work on, which has been discussed at previous meetings, continuing to work on some zoning changes that are geared towards business advocacy and being more business friendly here in the township of Millburn. These include the elimination or the elimination of parking requirement in the B4 district, as well as other permitted uses in the B4 and B2 and B3 districts. And the last one is the making restaurants a permitted use in the B4, B2, and B3 districts. That last one in particular is the one that I think has received over the past year or so the most conversation, consternation, and other various discussion. So we had a public information session and discussed these ordinances, had an open dialogue regarding these ordinances, and this particular ordinance that would address restaurants that are currently a conditional use in the township to become a permitted use. Received, we had a good discussion on this, and I'd just like to kind of go through it a little bit so that the committee has that understanding as well as the public. So currently the township does not allow restaurants. They are conditional use. What this ordinance will do is create a permitted use. However, the permitted use has a condition upon it. If it is within 125 feet of a residential zone, this current ordinance in this current draft would provide additional supplementary conditions upon that use. And it would go before the planning board. Again, in the B3 district and Chatham Road, Upper Millburn Avenue, which wraps around to Bill's Army, the former Bill's Army Navy, these areas tend to be the closest proximity to a residential lot line. I think one of the things as we continue to explore being more business friendly is how do we allow for an easier pathway for businesses to get into Millburn, and this is one of them. But what we've done in this ordinance is we've provided the protection that is necessary to our residents, but also created a path for those businesses that wish to come in as a restaurant use, which is really important, and I think it's really key to the success of the business districts in Millburn. And so it's very important that we continue to provide those protections. And again, some of those are, for instance, that the buffer is required between the property line and the business, that refuse is housed inside the building, or that it is enclosed and locked outside the building. Particularly in the B3, that there's no outdoor seating in the back of a property, that the entrance to the property is from the front, from the street, which are all kind of seem obvious, but I think are very important to clarify and make sure that they're in this, which they were never there previous. So we're continuing to just solidify this ordinance to present to the Township Committee on May 4th for introduction. These ordinances, because they are zoning changes, will require an introduction, a notice, a planning board review for master plan consistency, and then a final read in public hearing. Happy to answer any questions from the committee on these as well. But these have been sort of, again, kind of going through the process for some time now. We're excited to get them in front of you for introduction.
Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I think it's in the town's interest to adopt this. I think that we, as I've said before, we have quite a few vacancies, and I think this would allow for more businesses to come into the township, and I think it would be a good support to the township. Yeah. And also, just one other thing you touched on, I think this also includes to make sure that there's not going to be extra noise, that we're also going to look at making sure that these businesses adhere to our strict rules in terms of noise, pollution, filtering, potentially rodent abatement. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that any new businesses happen to be good neighbors also.
And
So-
that segues us
into the
into
next
number
one.
two.
Yes.
which
There is
the-
just one thing that I did want to bring up on these ordinances, just so that it's out there, is that we are looking to make an additional change to the B2 to allow for co-working space. It's not specifically specified right now that co-working space is allowed in the B2. And there's no restriction on office use in the B2, whether it's on the ground floor or anywhere else, but there is no specification that co-working or shared workspace is allowed. So we want to make that change.
Could you tell people where that is?
So, yeah, sorry. Jesse, do you have the zoning map? Jesse will bring it up quick so everybody
so
has.
people follow
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So the B2 is on Morris Turnpike from Mavis to Benihana. The B2 is also on Millburn Avenue from the former Annie Says building to the CVS building. Okay. The B3 district is Upper Millburn Avenue from Short Hills Avenue to Bill's Army Navy, or the Mavis Tire. It's on Chatham Road, the only business district on Chatham Road. And then of course the central business district is, the downtown. There's also a B3 zone, which just incorporates ShopRite as well. So the B2 in particular is a lot of office space or a lot of strip plaza type areas. There's, I think, an opportunity to allow for some co-working and shared space on the ground, in those areas. And the other thing in the B2 is that there's been some discussion about whether, in particular, the area on Millburn Avenue, where the Commons and investors, and Annie Says, is whether it makes sense to somehow use the roadway buffer to make again, going back to this restaurants as a permitted use, because there's a 4-lane road in between the R8 zone, which actually includes a lot of commercial property along that, and those buildings, to use that roadway as the buffer. And because the lot lines do not abut one another, they're actually abut in the dissected portion of the road, to allow so that restaurants could then be a permitted use in that area as well. Because you can imagine those commercial areas could see some significant activity in terms of restaurant use. I mean, Jade Lake's over there and things like that. So just wanted to also bring that up on this. So segueing into the next portion, which is what Deputy Mayor Wasserman was talking about, is some additional ordinances that were also being considered in this. And one is to address noise levels. The DEP has a model noise ordinance that establishes noise at a certain decibel level. And you have to, if you want to really attack noise, you have to sort of go that route. And you establish that by certain hours. And the decibel level that is established at the DEP level, you have to have an instrument to be able to read that and go and to enforce it, because noise can be very subjective. Somebody in your family might talk very loudly and you're very used to it, but somebody else that could be pretty noisy. Also, we are identifying the health code and other codes where we can provide additional restrictions or additional safeguards on road abatement, which is currently, the health department will go out and they'll respond and they'll instruct restaurants to bait and things like that. But is there a way for us to make sure that restaurants are baiting consistently and constantly? And lastly is to establish a business registration process so that as we eliminate the parking requirement particularly in the central business district, but this applies to all of them because it's important, is that we're eliminating the need for businesses when they go before the planning board to have an arbitrary number sort of attached to their application and say, oh, well, we're looking at this and we think that you should buy 13 business permits, not knowing whether that really applies to the operation of that business or not. We want to make sure that businesses feel comfortable coming to us and filling out a form and saying, we actually have 4 employees. One of them comes in by the train. We need 3 permits. Okay, and so that we have a registration process that makes this a little bit more fair, understandable, easy for our businesses to process, especially when it comes from parking. But it also allows us to have a way of collecting information, contacting, and all of that stuff. So that's also in process and will be drafted for the township committee.
Does anyone have any questions about the general vote updates?
I have-
Go ahead.
I do have one thing. I don't know if I sent you something over no, I sent it on Monday, some pictures. Is there, and you might not have gotten them, maybe they were too big, but as I was walking over the weekend, I saw businesses dumping things that concern me and open garbage containers. Are they not supposed to be, like, as you're walking by the river, should you be seeing 6 or 8 open garbage containers?
So it's the short answer is yes, those are the backs of the properties. They had not been instructed to put, them inside. Remember that a lot of these buildings in the downtown are old, that fitting a compactor inside the building is difficult and costly and may not be feasible. But I think to your point, Committeewoman, is that, is there a better way to mask that?
To mask it, and also the dumping.
Yeah, well, that's obviously depending on what it is. I mean, you said ice, yeah, but also that is, yeah, and that's something that you can always call.
What do you call on a weekend?
On the weekend, the non-emergency number 7001. They'll get the right people out there to respond to it.
Thank you.
And I just had one other question that dawned on me, that, there, sometimes when a business is vacant, and the landlord, we all assume that the landlord is supposed to make it relatively broom clean, because that's their property. But there are a couple violators in the township, and it really bothers me that there's an empty retail space and there's garbage on the floor. The windows aren't clean. There's nothing in the windows. And when people look in, it looks like somebody evacuated the premises in the middle of the night. I'm just wondering whether that's something that we could address, that a property should be broom, there's an expectation that the property should be broom clean when a retail, front is vacated. I mean, is that something that we could look into, or is it too late to do it on this?
Well, I wouldn't say it's too late. I think the question would just be in the amount of time, how many times have we run into this particular situation? And, I think you're dealing with a very subjective sort of, aspect to, what's broom clean and what's, it's something we can look into. I have not seen that type of ordinance or understanding,
In
but
real
yeah.
estate, when you sell a house, it has to be room swept clean and free of debris, or else the house doesn't close. So it's a matter of, if somebody's leaving a property, there shouldn't be things, there's bottles and papers, and it just looks messy.
Is that by state statute then, or?
Well, you don't have
is
to
it-
close. It's part of your sales contract.
Right.
It's part of your sales contract.
Okay, we'll take a look at it.
We just assume it's being done, but not always.
So we need to find out if it's legal to allow for that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, I just want to share one thought. This is Committeewoman Eglo. I do want to share my thought on the 125-foot setback. It might not be the most popular thought, but it was part of the info session we had. And we keep talking about making Millburn more business friendly, more inviting to restaurants and other types of uses. And I'm going to say this with understanding that, as Ms. Miggins knows, location, location, location. When you buy your house anywhere in town, you are either near the highway, you are near the railroad stations or the railroad tracks, or you are near Commercial Street. When you buy your house and it abuts to Millburn Avenue or Mars Avenue, you know that when you've purchased your property. And you know that there was Bill's Army Navy behind you, or there's Mavis Tire or Firestone. These are things that exist when you buy your house. Right now, during the pandemic, the trains were running at a much less velocity. And now they're going to be, and a lot of people move to town, and they might be shocked come September that the trains run very frequently and they start very early in the morning. I think we have to be open-minded with this 125-foot setback, that it's not, in my opinion, should be the rule and forever a setback. It has to be something we have an open mind to, because once these restaurants keep hearing that there's going to be all of these conditions and it's still going to be 10 to 15 or $20,000 to come before a planning board, they're going to go to Cranford, or they're going to go to Maplewood, or they're going to go to another town where their downtowns are thriving and inviting. And I think this is something really important. And we heard one of the landlords speak about this at the meeting. And we want to change the reputation that Millburn is a difficult place. So I think with the technical review committee and some other things that we're talking about, let's just not shut the door completely and keep that as the new stone model. Thank you.
Thank you, Committeewoman Egloff. Okay, and now Committeewoman Miggins is going to talk about the Development Review Committee.
That's a great segue. Thank you, Committeewoman Egloff. Currently, we have in the Township of Millburn an informal technical review committee. And so I've been looking at different committees that are out in different towns. For instance, Montclair, Madison, Haddonfield, Princeton, as our attorney tells us. They currently have ordinances that, or not ordinances, pardon me, they have groups, development review committees, that before you even get to the planning board, it's everyone with the board engineer or the township construction official or the planning consultant or an attorney or environmental rep. It could be shade tree, could be historic preservation. They almost help to put a package together so that when you get in front of the planning board, you're not there for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It's all been done beforehand. So I had the opportunity last week. I wanted to listen in on one of these calls. So Madison happened to have had their technical coordinating committee. In front of Madison currently, there's an application for a mosque. And so what they're doing with this application is everybody's involved before it even gets to planning. So it's an informal meeting. It would be just to review site plan applications, and the applicants can appear on their own behalf. They can appear with an attorney, an architect, or an engineer. The committee would determine the adequacy of the application materials provided to address technical standards, compliance with the township zoning requirements, development regulation, and design standards. And they might make recommendations on the design and technical elements of any application. They'll determine whether the project's in a critical area as defined by the environmental and historic resources inventory. They can recommend whether an environmental impact assessment, traffic impact assessment, or other special studies should be required. They'll make its findings known through a combination of written correspondence in advance of any meetings. So I was thinking that this should be something that we should look at as a town, because it's more about being proactive than reactive. Of late, we've been very reactive, and this would be a way to be proactive and getting environmental involved and getting shade tree involved and getting historic involved and having a package put together so that when they go to planning, it's done. It's done. So we see other towns doing it most successfully. As I said, Montclair does it, Madison, Haddonfield, Princeton. So I'd like for us to really look at it. It's informal. It's informal. It's not formal. It's informal. Just to be at the table. Be at the table. It appears that every time that, you know, something's in front of the planning board, it's always the applicant's experts. It's never our experts, whether it's traffic studies or anything. We have no, no say in the matter, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it's something, of course you get the fire department involved and the police department, if everybody signs off on everything. And so we already have something in town, an informal technical review committee. They have meetings the second Wednesday of every month. Our zoning officer, our planners on it, our engineer, our construction official, and then police and fire is needed, and then public works is needed. And I just think it's a nice way to probably beef this up. So that's what I really think it's important.
Mr. Falcon.
Yes, I took a look at the materials that the committee woman circulated as the Montclair. I also provided her, and I think you too, Mayor, with Princeton materials. I think it would involve an ordinance amendment. And I wanted to make sure that you understood. So when a matter goes to the planning board and you need a traffic expert, the town can get a traffic expert and it gets paid for by the applicant.
Mhm.
So there's no inability to get the experts at the planning board that you need to have and have them paid for out of an escrow that's posted by the applicant. But I also recommended that when we get to the point after, I guess, we get the information together that we need to take a look at, that
Mhm.
we form a working group to make sure, as we always try to do, that what we do is in conformance with the municipal land use law. But because anything that a municipality goes to do to regulate the use of someone's property has to fall somewhere within
Sure.
that municipal land use law. So we will want to vet it and make sure that it's sustainable. But
And
this is
since
a forward-looking idea, and
Thank you.
we should be able to pull it together and get it done right.
That would be awesome. And as we see other towns doing it, so we know that it's successful. And I think it's important that we're in charge. That's more proactive. Thank you.
Nice work.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would also concur. I think, part of this is also make sure that we get the best, that we have an excellent product at the end of it. So maybe a little input at the beginning of the process, could make a big difference.
It was very interesting to hear the applicant in Madison who's building this mosque. And everybody was prepared. Everybody had the right questions. The applicant and his attorney were amenable to changes. So it just seemed like it didn't get stuck in the mud. It just appears certain things just get stuck in the weeds. And it's a nice way to move things forward.
And our Perkins Eastman, as part of their process, recommended that we make that review committee more flexible and available. So I'm just throwing it out there that we should make sure that whatever's put together, it's not 1 hour once a week. There has to be some flexibility. So
Absolutely.
so we can make sure that we're not impeding somebody, but we're helping them and we're helping the town.
Right. Because there's no attorney even on this.
Yeah.
And it's an hour here and then it's like in a week.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so it seems like there's a lot of consensus. So do you want to keep
Keep
moving
keep
ahead
on
on
keeping
that?
on. Yes, ma'am.
Great. Okay, next up on old business is Mr. Joe Marazides here to talk about the redevelopment process with us. And specifically, we have a subcommittee that is discussing the redevelopment of the DPW site. Good evening.
This is Joe Marzini. My internet went out. Was I just introduced?
You were, perfect.
Okay, I missed that. So good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Township Committee. And good recovery to Township Committee Woman Iglo. So I've been asked to do a brief outline of the redevelopment process. And it is a very unusual process with respect to land development. That's not typical. And so I want to start out by saying that this is not the municipal land use law that I'm going to be talking about in terms of how projects are developed in a community under state statute and the Constitution. It's something that's set up under a very special process, a special statute, the Local Development and Redevelopment and Housing Law. And it provides an opportunity when all the criteria are met and when all the processes are followed. And I'll go through the 3 steps of the process in redevelopment. Once that's happened, there is an enormous transformation of the power of a municipality. It becomes able to participate in a negotiation for the development of property, which is not permitted under the municipal land use law. It enables the municipality to be much more in control of who is going to redevelop, what is going to be redeveloped, and when it's going to be redeveloped. And that power comes only after completing all of the statutory steps. Step one in the process is the determination that the area meets the statutory criteria as an area in need of redevelopment. That process requires a hearing before the planning board on the basis of a study that establishes the elements of the area and measure them against the criteria in the statute. And if the area in question meets one or more of those criteria, it may be declared an area in need of redevelopment. You're ahead of the game with respect to that, because that has already happened with respect to an area in downtown Millburn that is a portion of the downtown visioning area. And I think at some point, Alex can set up a visual that indicates that area we're talking about. It was determined by the Township Committee in 2007 on the basis of a recommendation from the planning board that it be declared to be an area in need of redevelopment. That was in 2007. So the question is, have things changed since then? Does it still qualify? And in March of this year, Paul Phillips, who did the original study in 2007, your planner, issued a letter indicating that the conditions have remained largely unchanged. There have been 2 changes, but the area in question, the conditions are largely unchanged. And I think that's the area shaded in gray. You can see that it is kind of chopped up a bit. It comprises about 13 acres in a portion of the downtown area of Millburn, and it is comprised primarily, and this is a big asset to the township, primarily a publicly owned property. It's a big asset in the redevelopment process, which I'll explain a little bit later in more detail. It includes, I think there are 5 private properties that are included in this area, and those properties will be invited to be part of the redevelopment plan. If it's, that's the next step I'll talk about in a minute. But I want to make the point that there will be no condemnation needed in order to implement whatever redevelopment plan is adopted by the Township Committee. And on the subject of redevelopment plans, I think all of you know that soon after the 2007 designation as an area in need of redevelopment, there was a draft redevelopment plan that was submitted and vetted and not adopted. So the redevelopment plan has not been adopted. And that's step 2 that has not yet been taken, but now it can be taken, because once an area has been determined to be in need of redevelopment, that's the phrase, in need of redevelopment, then the next step is to prepare a redevelopment plan. So what is a redevelopment plan? I think of it as a hybrid between, on the one hand, a master plan, because it has elements of a master plan. It's visionary, it's aspirational, but it also has elements of a zoning ordinance, because it establishes the zoning for the area, the redevelopment zoning for the area, and it therefore sets up the new terms of development in that section of the municipality. That zoning can either be superseding zoning, which is exactly what it says. It supersedes all the prior zoning that exists there as we sit here today. or it can, the plan can determine that the zoning is overlay. An overlay zoning simply means that the underlying zoning, the zoning that is in existence tonight, would remain, but there is the option for the redevelopment zoning. So that means that property owners can continue, in that case, to develop under the underlying zoning, but would not have the availability of the redevelopment zoning unless and until they were determined to be the redeveloper. And I'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. So what's the process to develop a plan? In my experience, the best plans are ones that occur as a result of a robust community involvement, visioning exercise, very much along the lines of what you have been experiencing with the downtown redevelopment or downtown revitalization effort undertaken by Perkins Eastman for some time. It would be very similar to that, but more focused on this particular area. Once the plan is drafted with the assistance of consultants and the members of the community and certainly the governing body, it would be forwarded to the planning board for review. The planning board's review is for the purpose, just as Alex was talking about before with any land use ordinance, it's for the purpose of determining whether the proposed plan is substantially consistent with the master plan or is designed to effectuate the master plan. That's the role of the planning board in terms of reviewing the draft master plan. They have 45 days to review it. The master plan, the redevelopment plan may not be adopted by the township committee until they have heard from the planning board or 45 days have passed. Now, the question also comes up, what happens if, and I wouldn't think that would be the case here, but what happens if the planning board says that the master plan is not substantially consistent or designed to effectuate the master plan? In such a case, the township committee by a supermajority vote can nonetheless adopt the plan, adopt the master plan, the redevelopment plan, as long as they set forth on the record the reasons why they are taking that position in spite of the determination by the planning board that it's not consistent. So I keep saying master plan when I mean redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan is adopted after that process takes place by an ordinance, which is like any other ordinance. It requires an introduction, second reading, public hearing, and then the redevelopment plan is the plan that sets forth the zoning for the area. Let's assume, as is the case with most, that it is superseding zoning, and most municipalities decide to go that route. Why? Because they've spent a lot of time on making the effort to determine the area to be in need of redevelopment because it's not properly redeveloping under the current zoning. And so the thinking is supersede it and provide for redevelopment. Now, once that step is taken, and only after that step is taken, are the powers that are unusual for a public body available to the governing body, which in Millburn serves as the redevelopment entity. And those powers basically allow you to implement a public-private partnership where the municipality, through the selection of a redeveloper or redevelopers, maybe more than one, enters into a redevelopment agreement. And that's the pole star of the whole process, the redevelopment agreement. That's the key document. The other documents get you to that point. That's the key document because that's the document that determines who's going to do the redevelopment and what is it going to look like with very specifics if you want them, and when will it happen. Now, the who, what, and when elements of the redevelopment agreement are not options for the municipality under the municipal land use law. Once a zoning ordinance is adopted, a property owner who has an application that complies with the zoning ordinance may appear before the planning board and be approved as of right. And so that process enables anyone who owns property to decide to develop it. Some people know how to do it and some people don't. It provides that entity, that property owner, submits a plan for development of the property that fits in the four corners of the framework of the zoning ordinance, which sets forth outlines, certainly property lines and setbacks and so on, but not aesthetic features and things of that sort. And once you have a zoning ordinance, you don't know when that zoning ordinance is going to be implemented. There's not a time frame. Property owners will decide when they want to do it, if they want to do it. So those who, what, and when issues from the municipal land use law do not apply in the redevelopment context. In the redevelopment context, the municipality has a great deal of control and may negotiate the outcome for the area. The effectiveness of their negotiation is all dependent upon the leverage that the municipality has in that conversation, like any other transaction between two negotiating parties. In the case of Millburn, Millburn has an enormous amount of leverage for at least two reasons. One is because it's Millburn. It's a very desirable community, and developers, redevelopers will be very eager to take advantage of the opportunity to participate in the redevelopment of Millburn. But there's an additional reason why in this particular case, Millburn has even more leverage. And that's because so much of the property, as I mentioned, is publicly owned. I acknowledge the fact that in some cases, those sites are occupied by needed public facilities, but those facilities are publicly owned. And so that is an advantage in the negotiating process because the assemblage of property and the acquisition of property is always a big issue in negotiating a redevelopment agreement. And that's an issue that is in control of the township in this case. So I've been mentioning that the redevelopment agreement in the process allows you to determine who, what, and when. So now I want to talk about the who. The who is the redeveloper that is chosen by the municipality. And the municipality, the redevelopment entity, may choose a redeveloper in accordance with its decision about what it wants to the redeveloper, what qualities the redeveloper should have in order to undertake the project. And so it's not everybody who can develop an area like this. It's not everybody who will be qualified to do it. The process for selecting a redeveloper in New Jersey at the moment is very flexible. There's no statutory requirement that there be a bidding process, a competitive process, public process of any type. A redeveloper may come to the table and make a phone call and be selected based upon conversations. That's not the practice, although that is the legal possibility. The practice in all the communities that we represent throughout New Jersey is that a request for proposals is advertised by the municipality describing the area, setting forth what the terms of the redevelopment plan are, and inviting interested entities to submit qualifications. And in the case of a project of this size, significance, financial capability is key, as well as experience. And so in the communities that we represent, I have been part of committees that have reviewed proposals from proposed redevelopers and have been evaluated on the basis of not only what their financial capability is, what their experience is, but also very importantly, what their preliminary proposal is to develop the area. Because the redevelopment plan, although it can be very specific, doesn't need to be, but it can be very specific, it will nonetheless have lots of details that have to be filled in. And when I have been talking about who, what, and when, the what is very important. And in redevelopment, the community can determine exactly what is going to be built. You can't do that with the utilizing municipal land use law. You can get into aesthetics. You can get into also community benefits as part of the redevelopment agreement. So when the RFP is submitted and respondents come in, you want to know what their preliminary thinking is. And typically at the end of that process, a redeveloper, a conditional redeveloper is selected. And the practice that we have recommended to our clients is that there be a designation of a conditional redeveloper conditioned on the negotiation of the full details of the redevelopment agreement, because that's a document that will be very significant, very long-term. More often than not, projects take a number of years to implement. And so it takes time to negotiate that. So the process that we recommend and follow throughout the state is that a conditional designation of the redeveloper be entered into, an agreement that also provides for an interim cost agreement by which the redeveloper agrees to deposit with the municipality a negotiated sum to reimburse the municipality for the expenses that are incurred in connection with the redevelopment process, which can usually takes months, sometimes takes longer. And that sum of money can be replenished as is depleted and will pay for all the professional expertise that the municipality decides it needs in order to vet the project and negotiate the most appropriate deal for the public. And part of that process is also a financial analysis of the project, not only of the redevelopment entity, but of the project itself, to look at the pro forma of the project and to determine the extent to which the municipality can negotiate in exchange for selecting the redeveloper, community benefits that are not available under the municipal land use law, that can go beyond the municipal land use law requirements that limit what a developer can be required to pay, because a developer can only be required to pay under the municipal land use law for those improvements that are needed and necessitated by their development. That's not the case in redevelopment. So we look to see what the delta is, what the profit level is through the analysis of the pro forma, and negotiate, give and take. It's a horse trade. Other benefits, maybe payments for an open space trust fund. It may be adding different green spaces to the redevelopment area. It may be other types of community identified needs. We've had a negotiation where a community gym was provided as part of a redevelopment project. So these are things that are not possible under the normal way that you develop land in New Jersey. And once the redevelopment agreement is negotiated and entered into, it is a binding contract. And it commits the redeveloper to develop the project that has been described in the redevelopment agreement on Exhibit A. So there's not a bait and switch kind of a thing. You establish exactly what's going to happen. And Exhibit B is the project schedule. When is it going to happen? And that is, in a nutshell, there's lots of details I've left out, but that in a nutshell is the redevelopment process. And I'm happy to answer any questions that members of the Township Committee may have. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mariziti. Does any of the committee members have any questions at this point?
I understood the presentation, but why is it there is what I'm trying to understand.
Oh, why is he giving the presentation?
Yeah.
Because we have a subcommittee working on the redevelopment of the DPW site.
So is this because of the perk easement, the recommendation? Or
Yes,
is it?
exactly. So out of the vision plan that that we went under through that process, there were 4 main initiatives that came out of the vision plan. One was the Taylor Park entranceway.
Yeah.
One was two-way traffic
two-way
circulation.
traffic, okay.
One was the business advocacy development and zoning issues. And then the 4th one was the DPW site. So we have a subcommittee. We've had our first meeting, right, which I reported on. We have our second meeting on Friday. Jorge Mastro Pietro has been added to that subcommittee. And I thought it was really important to bring Mr. Mariziti in and have this super transparent for everyone to see that this is one of the paths that we are moving down.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Mariziti. Could you, if age restricted came into the equation, I'm not saying it is, but if it was, is that something that the township could dictate if there was a component to it? I mean, if we wanted to, have age restriction as part of this?
Sure. I mean, I would use a different word than dictate because, as I've been saying, it's a negotiation. But that is something that could be negotiated. It's not, you wouldn't have the power through an ordinance to say, this must be it. I mean, your redevelopment plan would anticipate that. And I would think you could spell out in your redevelopment plan that you want an emphasis on that. But you only get it, that outcome, in terms of the leverage you have. And you might have enough leverage to get that. Some developers push back on that. But you may have other aspects of the plan that would make it attractive for them. So it's a negotiation, and everything's up for negotiation.
Thank you.
So at some point, we may go out to do an RFP for someone to come in and do a redevelopment plan, which would be a process similar to what Perkins Eastman did, but even more robust engagement to come up with what then a plan.
Right.
To then come before our township committee, to go before the planning board, to come back to the township committee before we would even get to the point of negotiating with a redeveloper.
That's correct.
So we just want to be really upfront about this whole process and keep everybody informed so that everyone can stay engaged.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mariziti.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are going to take a 5-minute recess so that everyone can stretch their legs and use the restroom.
Maggie, thank you for asking those questions earlier.
My pleasure. We're all neighbors. Yes, we are. I'll disagree with you on that. We all are. We can agree with disagree, but it's truth is the truth, facts are facts.
Something's going on. Oh, no, crazy is now buying property. Like, what are we in Seattle? How do you do this price? There's no way. I gave it up to my coffee. Oh, I used to read. I did. As I say, this train.
By the way, Jackie, I stand corrected. Rich is-
waiting for Mr. Molman?
You're probably okay right now. We'll be in.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the fifth topic of old business, which is the JFK Parkway Cell Tower. Mr. McDonald, can you please brief us on that?
Yes, so toward the end of last year, I had brought up the proposal that was presented to the township by Verizon to potentially place a tower at the JFK leaf composting site. Now, of course, this wouldn't necessarily be their tower because it would have to be a bid out. However, they were the ones that approached about that particular site. At that time, we were asked to just kind of pause and wait until we were done with the visioning process and to maybe reinvigorate this conversation later. So wanted to bring this forward to see where the township committee currently sat on this, and I'll provide just a bit more background on the particulars of it. Verizon has a particular in that area, Poet section, White Oak Ridge Road, as we heard a little bit about tonight, things like that. There is spotty coverage. This tower would be located on the again, proposed tower would be located on township's leaf composting site at JFK Parkway, which the township has 11 acres of property there. 5.5 of those acres are buildable, meaning there's no restrictions, riparian, wetland, or otherwise. This particular tower would be in the ballpark of 300 square feet in terms of the space that it took up at the base. It would be 120 foot tall. Again, this is just from preliminary discussions with a representative from Verizon. However, this would need to be bid. It would provide a revenue to the township. The township, should it need it, would be able to place its emergency equipment on that tower. And this would be a tower that then would have multiple carriers on it, similar to the questions that were asked earlier: T-Mobile, Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, things like that. So just wanted to kind of check back in, see what the appetite of the committee was for pursuing this endeavor.
Mr. McDonald, you said it's 11.5 acres?
11 acres total at that location. However, only 5.5 of those acres are actually out of a restricted type of area.
I'm on the rec commission and they've been looking for fields forever. I would like to allocate that towards field if that is also the possibility.
Well, I think that's certainly a much larger discussion, and I'm just kind of, and I don't know that changes the conversation about the 300 square feet for this particular use. If you had a field up there, or if you had leaf composting, or if you had, a recycling center, whatever it might be up there, the 300 square feet, I think it's still, unless you were thinking of putting something that would have people would have an adverse reaction to having that type of use there. I think any one of those, continues to satisfy. So, but I do think that's probably a little bit of a larger conversation.
Right, I'm absolutely open to what other committee members have to say, and maybe I can understand it more. But I was a little surprised in the rec commission that they don't have enough fields available, and they've been looking everywhere. If we own some property like this, which is, I think there is nothing to be built there other than the restrooms. If we build the fields there, I think it could be one of those Jura Park there for the township, and we don't need that much of a cell tower. I don't want to come across I'm against Verizon today, but 120 feet tall. I think this is another land found. I'd be very keen on discussing about this in the rec committee and waiting to hear from others too.
I'd like to take a pause on it. I don't see a need. We haven't finished everything. We haven't decided everything. And I think we're doing an awful lot. And I don't think it's necessary that we put any phone towers on our land right now. I don't think that the benefits there at the moment, because as you said, our land, Mr. Marizzuti said, this is Millburn Short Hills and our land's valuable. So I don't think I'd like to see a cell phone tower there. Or pause it at the very least.
May I ask a question? If we put this out for bid, it's not like we're having to accept it. And I think, again, we have to realize that there is many areas up in Short Hills that have very spotty coverage. It would help our emergency vehicles. This is not a new issue we have in town. And it's a revenue stream. And if it doesn't go on a 300 square feet of our property, which would not prohibit us doing fields or anything else up there, it's a benefit to our community. As I said earlier, more and more people do not have landlines. I would like to find out an informal poll of how many houses have sold to new people during the pandemic, how many of those people even put landlines in. And people will continue to work from home. I think this should definitely be explored. I was actually very disappointed when it was, the discussion was closed off previously. I think this is something we should continue to explore with an open mind. And Committeeman Vinayak, I know we need fields. You know, I was instrumental in getting that turf field done. So we know there's a need for that, but this would not take away from a turf field. And it provides a huge benefit to our residents and our businesses. And this is why we are here, for their benefit. So I am strongly advocating the exploration of this and seeing who's interested, because if it's not us, it's going to be across the street in East Orange. So why are we giving away another revenue stream that is of pure benefit?
Mr. McDonald, what's the revenue stream amount to?
Generally, it's about $3,000 to $4,000 a month. So, you know,
So
40,000.
40,000.
So if we miss $40,000 revenue stream, and I think Committeewoman Egler just mentioned that there's also an option for them to go in East Orange, right around there. So as far as the cell tower goes, we would still get the same reception if it's 10 steps behind that area. I think, thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Eglo. I would still feel with the redesigning and everything going on, I think I would go for waiting. Again, I understand what Ms. Eglo is saying.
Well, redevelopment, anything that's going to be going to happen will take time. This would not take time. And why would we give a revenue stream away, even though we'd get the benefit of the cell service? This is again, Millburn shutting down and not being open to opportunities that are coming our way.
I hear you.
But once, Mr. McDonald, once we do it, we can't undo it, right? Like you're making a deal, so whatever deal you have, you can't undo it if you change your mind later.
Like the marijuana. Like the marijuana. You could, if you allowed marijuana and then in 5 years decided, you know what, we don't want that marijuana anymore. We don't want that store. They would still be grandfathered in to stay.
As long as they last, yeah. Right. But in this particular example, this would be a longer term lease, correct? It is not something where they're going to spend the capital to place a 120-foot tower and say, you know, after 5 years, we'll take it down. Yeah. It's going to be 20 to 30 years in terms of that lease. And I do want to point out in terms of the bid process and stuff, you know, generally speaking, when you go out to bid, unless you have a particular reason that's covered under the local public contracts law to deny that bid, you do have to accept the bid. You're going out to bid based on the knowledge that you're ready to do that. You've done your vetting process. You've gone through that you do need to do. And that once you receive the bids, unless there's a reason, like it's over your cost or it's, you know, the individual is not a responsible bidder, or, you know, you have previous bad experience with them, whatever it might be, then you can deny or reject the bid. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, so it seems that we're not going to do anything right now, but there's definitely issues with self-service in our town. I mean, I think that I think that that's an issue that at some point we should try to resolve for our residents. So. we'll
Well, I
just-
like the idea of East Orange putting it on theirs,
Right,
and it's
right,
5 feet
right.
away.
Well, but if they don't,
But I thought I thought the last we talked about this, East Orange was in negotiations with them.
No, I think the reason that they've come to us is because they've had difficulty in getting East Orange to do
They
that.
don't want it
Plus,
either.
plus East Orange, it's East Orange property in Millburn Township, which means that they will have to go before the zoning board to get approval for that cell tower.
Which I'm sure.
well, I feel for the people in their houses that don't have good cell service.
So another thing, Mayor, I think the cell phone coverage, when you say at home, there are devices that are being made. At home, you can still get the cell phone services because you can put those devices. It is on the road when you go that you may not have your cell coverage. But at home, if you're working from home, AT&T or Verizon or other, they can still provide you those portable devices where you can get the coverage. It's like a very small portable device for you to use as a home office or.
So maybe we can put that information out to our residents because I've definitely spoken to people in their homes that have and maybe they don't know. So Mr. McDonald, can you look into ways that we can educate our residents about that? If there's something that they could do in terms of if they're experiencing.
Dropped coverage.
Right.
We'll take a look at it. We do have to be careful about promoting any particular product or anything like that, but
Okay, or
But
maybe, we have like an awareness around pet waste, so maybe we
Mhm.
can have some kind of awareness campaign around.
And you can put it all
Cell
out there
service.
from Google or from Amazon or for any, there are a lot of those portable devices that work
Right.
through your Wi-Fi.
Right.
And get you that.
we
cell
can,
service.
right,
about
we
the
can frame it
product.
as a public safety issue too.
Talk about the
Awesome.
product, not the brand.
Done. All right, perfect. On to new business, the Hunterdon Area Energy Aggregation. Mr. McDonald.
Sure.
Can you give us some background on?
Yeah,
on all of
so
this?
I think we had previously brought this up just briefly, but the township has an opportunity to go through a community energy aggregation program. This one is located in Hunterdon. We had previously explored this possibility with a group of Essex County towns where Maplewood was a lead agency. However, because those communities were PSE and G, the price differential didn't work for us. When the bids came back, it was not advantageous to our residents to be a part of that program. Therefore, we bowed out, and that group still exists today. Is that correct, Mr. Mullen? Yeah. So they're still going through that process. However, we needed to find a potential area where we were being grouped with the JCP&L towns. Hunterdon Area Energy Aggregation offers that. We need to do some work on our end from an administrative standpoint and a legislative standpoint. We currently have an ordinance on the books that establishes Millburn as a lead agency in a community energy aggregation program. However, that's not what we're looking to do here. So we have received some information from this group, very helpful, very knowledgeable, which is a draft ordinance to repeal our current ordinance and place an ordinance which would allow us to participate, allow our municipality to participate in a community energy aggregation program. We anticipate introducing that on May 4th, having the group Hunterdon Energy Aggregation come to the May 18th Township Committee meeting to make a brief presentation about the program. And adopt the ordinance on June 1st, at which time we will also look to enter into this aggregation program. Some things to understand about home and community energy aggregation programs. They are opt-out programs. Right now, our residents have the choice as they're going through to be able to choose if they want to participate in a third-party energy supplier. And again, this is the supply, not any of the distribution. Everything else stays the same, but they're allowed to choose their third-party supplier. what this program would do would be to blanket the entire municipality and say, everybody's in this program that's been bid out and provides a rate savings to the community. It also provides a green component to that supply of energy. And everybody's in. And if you want out, you just have to let us know that you want out. But it's considered an opt-out program. And so, but the advantages of this is that certainly we would not move forward if it was not a rate savings to the township residents. It also offers a green component to the energy that's being supplied. And they're actually discussing, and I don't want to steal any of their thunder or their wind, but they're actually discussing having an opt-up part of it where that you can choose to have a larger green component to the supply of energy that you're getting. And so these programs go on all over the state. A lot of municipalities aggregate their energy on their own as well. And so more information to come and a presentation to come on May 18th. And yeah, that's the program.
And also our Environmental Commission Chair, Priya Patel, has been working on this
Oh, yeah.
as well, and probably has sent you all some things. So if you have questions, she would be a good one to talk to.
Yeah. Priya has been the impetus.
Yeah. Is there any initial cost with this for the township?
Mm-mm.
I mean, seems like a no-brainer.
It does seem like a no-brainer when you go through it.
And they do all the work for you as well. Like there's no added time for staff or any added, energy for staff except for, I mean, you obviously get the phone calls sometimes with people not understanding that they have to opt out and things like that. But generally the group takes care of all of this.
Okay.
That's great.
To be continued. So is there any other member of the committee have any new business that they would like to bring up at this point? Okay, on to public comment. Just once again, public comment period is a time for you to state your comments. It's not a dialogue between the public and the township committee. Our contact is available on the township website, and we welcome your emails. When public comment period is over, we will take a few moments to respond to any, as we did during consent agenda, to respond to any of your questions or comments. And that is the appropriate time that we will respond to you, not while you're making the public comment. When you're ready to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. At the 2.5 minutes, you will hear the buzzer and we'll have 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. When the second buzzer goes off at the full 3 minutes, your allotted time is over. And it is with consensus from this full township committee that we will strictly adhere to the 3-minute time limit for public comments. So please be respectful of that. And no person is permitted to yield his or her time to another speaker. Please remember that we are all neighbors and we are here because we love our town. Please do not disrupt the meeting by making disparaging remarks or by speaking beyond your 3-minute allotted time for public comment. Okay, let's begin public comment.
Again, my name is Jeffrey Feld, 11 Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey. It's about approximately 9:45 p.m. I just want to elaborate on certain things that were not mentioned. Last Wednesday, there was a case management conference that the public was allowed to monitor regarding the SID. At that time, the township said they would get back to the judge and to the parties within a week, whether they would choose to mediate or litigate. And I think the public is entitled to what the township's policy position is in that litigation. Are you going to mediate or litigate? Second thing, earlier this evening, the deputy mayor talked about the appointment of a new SID executive director. At the SID meeting, that was a walk-on resolution. The public was not allowed to address any issues regarding the retention. The new contract, based on the terms we know, is $20,000 more than the other person was made, and it throws out the budget that you'll be talking about on May 4th. And it also conflicts with what the documentation that you provided the state regarding the Main Street, New Jersey program. Various people made requests regarding Oprah, through Oprah, regarding the contracts. And the response we received, we will not get the information until May 14th. And that's after the hearing on May 4th on the budget of the SID. I'm very concerned about the presentation we had about redevelopment. I understand about the process. You think Chatham Woodland has been heated? What is going to be the attitude of the public when they find out you wanted to redevelop the location of the DPW site without talking to the public? Because I don't really think the public has had input whether they want that site redeveloped. I would take, maybe you want to take a pause before you go out for RFQs, whether the public wants to take that step. Because the first time you tried to do it about 12 years ago, it got defeated. I think that you have to get the input of the public. I don't know how to vote as to the survey about ripping out the sidewalks without knowing the cost. I just don't know how to do it. Reminds me of when the school board about 20 years ago tried to do about a $40 million bond issue. And the public upward, we work on Wall Street. We don't make decisions without information. That's what I'm saying to you. When you talk about transparency, the public needs basic information and facts to make their determinations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feld. Mr. Molman, do you want to take from?
Hello, this is Gwen Olabi, 46 Maple Street in Melbourne. I would like to make a comment regarding the fields versus the Verizon poll. I will have to agree with Committeeman Sanjeev regarding the field use. And I would like the public to know that we desperately need more fields in town. I can tell you this firsthand. I'm not against Verizon, but maybe they could look elsewhere for what they need to do. We're only missing $40,000 in revenue stream, and I'm not trying to minimize that amount, but we have, like for example, the lacrosse team practicing later and later at night. We have our children not being able to make use of the field that we currently have in town. We have an hierarchy thing going on where, the high school take the first dip on the field use, and then recreation, and then everybody else, are just left hanging. So I think we need, there's better use if, when you're ready to make the decision with the fields versus Verizon. I can't see my timing, so I'm not sure if I still have more time left. I would also like to make a comment with regard to the speed limit on Wyoming Avenue. You spoke about that, maybe an hour ago. I've spoken on this at previous meetings and nothing has been done by the township. Children around this area in Wyoming school cross this major street, and this ties into the issue with the crossing guard. The street is very dangerous to cross with a guard, let alone without one. So when a crossing guard does not show up for duty, the township need to make sure that, they make every effort to send a police officer to cross our children. And I don't think outsourcing the crossing guard is the solution, to be quite honest with you. Looking more closely into the reason why our crossing guards are not staying will help find a solution. And looking at what Summit is doing, we have more crossing guards in our town than our surrounding towns, and we're still not able to keep our crossing guards. So, outsourcing all of these things out of town is really not the solution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening again, Dominique Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue. My first public comment, I would like to thank the Township Committee for putting speed bumps back into the lot behind my restaurant, Jarvis Lane. I would like to thank Committee Member Miggins for emailing me. Unfortunately, I've been a little bit busy and not able to meet, but I would like to add what I was referring to in an email saying that one of the 3 speed bumps is missing. There's actually markings of where the old one was, so it's easy just to put a new one right there, and it's right in the back parking lot where the old Anita Ideas and the Blausteins Schultz Furrier is. It's right there. So if someone can just finish that and put the last speed bump, that would be amazing. Thank you. And I would also like to thank the whole township committee for extending a parking courtesy to our families who overstay their parking permits during private events at our restaurants. For example, something like a repass when guests are not in their best state in grieving and overstay their parking meter a little bit. Another point I would like to make is on the issue of flex parking survey. In particular, Mayor Prupus, why did you sanction a survey at this time on flex parking? Our town is facing major issues, including the forced, unimproved attempt by the TC to transform Millburn into a quote unquote hip town, as you stated in the Main Street, New Jersey application. But yet you choose to go after a nitpicky topic like flex parking. Do you know that using taxpayer resources to electioneer is against the law, right? After all, you promised to undo complete streets when you last ran for TC. In fact, that was your primary campaign pitch. So one might ask, are you trying to create an illusion with the electorate in Millburn that you have done something about complete streets? Was this a town-wide mailing campaign to gather votes? It appears you are looking to spend a load of money on ripping out downtown parking while the businesses are still losing business due to COVID and are still trying to make ends meet and made up for lost money and time. Now we'll have a possibility to endure another big mess. What are you thinking with this? Please explain this preposterous survey to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Perry Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue. Thank you for your time tonight. Just want to let you know for the past 2 meetings in a row, the YouTube live streaming has been down and then it's back up again. So it's been in and out. So to my point, on Tuesday, March 9th, 2021, at the TC meeting, I presented a statement regarding franchise fees in the township budget. Raised awareness that the local government channel was not publicizing any township information. In fact, January, the channel went dark. Suddenly, with much concern and possibly debate, within 48 hours, a township employee was given a 1-hour training course, an antiquated bulletin board appeared, and the Millburn Township aired the township committee meeting from Tuesday, March 19th at 9 p.m. on a Friday night. My questions to the committee. For the people within the community that are not either computer savvy or even technically challenged, or in the event internet, like Mr. Mariziti said today, should be interrupted, will the township be providing a program scheduled on the the township website? Second question, does the township have an obligation to post the meetings for the public governmental education? Another question, will the station be airing all important township information and all boards? Another question, how much of the collected franchise fees amounting to $250,000 to $300,000 annually, coincidentally, is received from the cable and internet subscribers within this community? Previously, the township showed that they have paid something like $15,000 a year to HDTV. How much of the collected amount does Millburn spend on broadcasting? Secondly, on January 20th, 2021, I sent a request to Millburn seeking notice submitted by the township attorney's firm that they have reached an 80% of the retention cap for the calendar year 2020. On January 27th, I received an answer that no record was found. Additionally, there was no resolutions listed within the minutes from the calendar year 2020 approving any increase of retention to the municipal attorney. However, the minutes to reflect approval of the bill list payments. My questions to the committee, Who was responsible for making payments over the retention cap approved by the resolution at the January 2020 reorg meeting to Falcone and Marizzi's firm? Second question, what are the repercussions to the TC committee members, the business administrator, and the CFO for making these payments? Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to getting my answers sometime soon. Have a nice evening.
Hello, this is Richard Footer, 333 Millburn Avenue. I have 3 comments to make regarding parking. The first is permits, where you're looking to get rid of business permits. I understand why you're doing it, but I think the method is wrong. You'll always know how many parking spaces you have. However, planning boards and zoning boards of the past have always been able to keep track of the variances and waivers that they've issued as compared to the inventory of parking spaces that they're issuing them against. My suggestion would be to continue to require the business permits, drastically reduce the price to cover the administrating of issuing them. But at least you'll have an idea and an inventory of how many people are buying them and be able to balance it, because some township committee in the future is going to have to answer to additional parking. And by continuing the permits, you'll have a foothold in inventorying what you need against what you have. The next topic is also parking, the bus stop. The reason why the bus stop is at the corner of Main Street at Millburn Avenue is because, and I served on Millburn's Parking and Traffic Committee for close to 30 years. Every time we looked at it, you need enough space for a bus to pull in to its space. So you may not be gaining any additional parking spaces by moving the bus stop. You may actually be losing them. For some reason, I've never understood why. I couldn't find any regulation that required a space in front of the bus stop for the bus to pull out, but it's always been for it to pull in. And if you move it down further, you may wind up just with a bus double parking all the time. The flex parking, I'd like to make a comment about. I wasn't going to, but I read on, it was either a Facebook page of Millburn's, maybe it was a township website, where the number of spaces were referred to as only 23. Well, it may be only 23 spaces in that given area, but it's approximately 207 parking opportunities if you average out the number of times the spaces turn over at about an hour, 1 per hour. And now, a lot of people will park there and get out faster. And yes, a few will be occupied longer, but it's 207 parking spaces. Where are you going to, parking opportunities? Where has Millburn taken a look at where they're going to increase parking if you continue to go down this road?
Thank you.
That's my comment, and thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Lisa Reppert, and I represent the interests of Ann Andriagi, a resident at 10 Glenwood Drive. She's asked me to speak on her behalf tonight. Less than a year ago, I came before the Township Committee in opposition to an ordinance which sought to change the requirements of the neighborhood business B3 zone so as to permit restaurants without any need to apply for a conditional use application. Most, if not all, of the Glenwood section, which abuts Meadowbrook Road and has a buffer of less than 20 feet from businesses. The neighbors organized in opposition to the ordinance change, and it's important to note that at the time, the Township Committee acknowledged that it heard the Glenwood residents and understood their concerns. Now, one Township Committee now says, tough luck, you should not have bought property that borders businesses. However, this statement was made in ignorance, where that was the exact reason that residents buy in the Glenwood section due to the long-time existence and enforcement of the B3 zone, which was enacted to protect residents from certain types of businesses in light of this very small buffer. The residents have coexisted successfully with many businesses in this area, including art galleries, clothing stores, tailors, salons, yoga studios. Squirrel and Bee's conditional use application was only approved after it stated it would only be using a microwave to reheat food and not large ovens, and it would have limited hours and close by 5 p.m. each day. Last time the Township Committee was shown pictures of Bacone South and how it's been maintaining the area that buffers Glenwood Drive with large grease containers, strewn cardboard boxes, scattered equipment and furniture everywhere, grease, and an unapproved storage shed that has no permit. The committee acknowledged this was unacceptable and said that an ordinance official would address these concerns. Nothing has changed. Property remains a pigsty. Subsequent Oprah requests confirm that this business never applied for a conditional use application. This has been pointed out to both the Township Committee as well as the Zoning Board in writing on multiple occasions. Yet this business continues to operate illegally with absolutely no sanctions by the town. Bacone's was denied a sidewalk license, yet the town continues to permit this business to operate outside while playing loud music and staying open many evenings till midnight. Tonight, the music was blasting as well. Since pointing out these infractions, I also walked by the area only to find the prior mayor and business administrator meeting with its owner at a table outside. This is highly unethical and irregular. To add insult to injury, I've now found out that the current Township Committee member has circulated a video of Bacone's current expansion and telling the business community that they're taking over the former Ganny site on the corner as well. How can it expand its operations when it's not even operating legally in the first place? It's highly improper for the town to make a decision which is outside its own jurisdiction, which would be controlled by the zoning board. These should not be done deals. They require testimony and applications. We demand an apology and a retraction of the representation that Bacone South has already been approved for extension of its business into another area. We demand that it be shut down where it's operating illegally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've taken all the calls on the Zoom. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to make comment?
Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart. I'm blown away. I hope you guys take that seriously. If you mean transparency as you stated it, Mayor, I hope you will listen and act upon what that woman just said. I also feel if you really care and want this community's input, you better hold a public forum so everybody can have a say in what this grand plan is that was discussed this evening. I'd like to also ask Ms. Miggins, since you're on this memorial committee, that survivors of 9/11 be included, families, as well as people who've lost people in the tragedy of 9/11. In the spirit of robust and informed civic participation, I want to thank Jeff Feld for allowing us access to through his ability to contact the judge to let us look in on this Essex County Civil Case Management Conference. What was on the line was the SID and discussing it and defending it. Bear Properties versus Millburn is the case. It was an action transferred to the Law Division, and it was about the validity of the SID ordinance approved by the Township Committee in a 3-2 vote in August 2020, expanding the SID and creating a district management corporation. I learned a lot watching this. I have to say, it was very enlightening. What I heard was, the basis for this, which is the SID was formed without following state enacted laws governing them. No buy-in and consensus from the assessed Millburn businesses. The use of taxpayer funds for 2021 to fund the SID. No feasibility study to see who actually wants this expanded 5-zone SID. Having an appointed rather than an elected board of trustees. A possible conflict of interest for current Mayor Prupus, who cast the deciding vote in favor of the SID. Longtime resident attorney Ken Gerard represented business owner Bear Properties. He acknowledged a critical shortage of judges, and he proposed to the township attorney Brewer that this matter go to mediation. The short circuit would save taxpayers lots of attorney fees and costs, and it will avoid needless discovery and allow the parties to focus on substantive statutory issues, negotiate a settlement, and avoid embarrassing the township. He rejected this offer out of hand, saying that we are too far apart. The judge set him straight and said, this is a writ action. There's usually little discovery. There can be exceptions, he said, but he wasn't buying it. He basically said, I'm the biggest proponent in this courthouse of mediation, but I can't force it at this stage. So he made it clear, in my opinion, without saying it, that this is the road ahead for this particular case. He added this, if you go the other route, it's going to be expensive, and he let those two seasoned attorneys know that a record needed to be created because this matter most likely would be appealed if the parties could not settle. The judge more or less said, why would you, representing a public trust funded by taxpayer trust fund monies, go to the expense and longevity that a trial would involve when these matters seem to be relatively straightforward, statutory interpretation issues that could be settled outside the court with relative ease? Looks like the right way to go is mediate. I hope that's what will happen.
Thank you. Before I close public comment, is there anyone else that would like to make comment?
Nancy Stone, 266 Essex Street. Nancy and David Fine Jules. Jeff, unbelievable stellar job for bringing all of these matters to public light, which clearly many are not doing anything about. So you kind of wonder, is it a waste of time showing up? I think not, because the presence is important to be able to make your voice known. Jean, that was an unbelievable statement. I am absolutely floored by what Lisa just shared. Now I understand why, as I'm following the meetings, why Bacone's application was pulled from the planning board. So clearly there's an issue going on there that Lisa brought forth to this committee. So the fact that I want to applaud Eileen Davitt for not issuing a cafe license, because obviously they're operating illegally. So I really would be interested to know, what's going to be done about that. But then again, there's neon signs all over town that nothing gets done. Sandwich boards all over town, nothing gets done. You make these rules and regulations and then don't enforce them. So I was happy to hear about the business permits going down in price. That would be a nice welcome reprieve for some of the businesses to have incentive to buy them. So that would be wonderful. Crossing guards. We have this wonderful police officer here protecting all of you, could be spending his mornings watching the children. I don't think the three of us are that dangerous that you need a police officer here every week. But if you want to spend my money, our money doing that, that's really, it's insulting and it's embarrassing for you. It really is, but that's your choice. What can I tell you? All I can say is that we show up every week. Waste of time, who knows? Obviously, somebody's listening, somebody pays attention, and we just hope that something finally gets done for the good of the town, because clearly you're just pushing through, rubber stamping, doing whatever the hell you want anyway, because it really doesn't matter. You got the votes to do it. That's what, Carrie's been wanting to develop the dump forever. It's no secret. Those that are in the know it. Who's going to be the developer? 30 seconds to say, just be straightforward with what the hell you're doing, because we're not dummies. We find it out anyway. And who the hell wants to Oprah and make this man richer? That's all that's happening, is that Kit has to build a town for these Oprah requests that we should be getting this information anyway. There's no necessity for it. So don't make it that it's their fault for asking for information that we should have in the first place. 3 minutes are up.
Thank you. And public comment is now over. So I'm just going to run through some comments and questions that I'd like to respond to and ask Mr. McDonald to respond to. So in terms of the speed bumps that Ms. Urso was talking about, can you just give some clarification on where the third speed bump is? No.
I mean, I can't off the top of my head.
Okay.
She's stating that there's a third speed hump there. It's possible that it was located on private property because part of that driveway, part of that parking lot is private property. So DPW took out, DPW put back.
Okay.
That's what I've been told.
Okay. So you have had the conversation with the DPW and they have said to you that they put back whatever they took out.
Correct.
Can you address Ms. Urso's questions about some of the questions about the YouTube streaming and did the YouTube go out tonight and the franchise fees and the broadcasting and that kind of any of that?
The YouTube equipment doesn't work sometimes, so I just have to call the company. It went out, it went back, I put it back 2 hours ago, so it's just the equipment. I have to call the company.
Okay, but all of the lot.
No one shut off.
Okay, so YouTube streaming, but we're on Zoom,
Correct.
right? And so that's like consistently always on. And then the videos of the township committee are completely posted in its entirety on the website.
Correct.
Okay. And,
Yeah, just to further comment on that is
Yeah.
that we're actually going, and I realize that there are some people that prefer watching on the YouTube live or YouTube live stream, or people that prefer Zoom. We're actually doing this in multiple different ways, between the YouTube, the Zoom, and in person. So in this particular instance, we are having technical difficulties with that YouTube equipment. So we have to have that looked into, but we do have Zoom, which is always accessible. We put it on the website. It's put up on our YouTube channel so that it can be viewed after the meeting. And yes, these are also then posted to the township's television station as well.
Okay. Bacone and that whole situation, what Lisa brought up, can you please respond to some of those questions and what is going on there?
You would like me to respond now?
I would, if you can.
I mean, there are a lot of accusations made in that as well, and so I think it makes more sense to take time to develop a response to that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at the I mean, because I am not aware of what's going on over there, and so you know, we need to respond in some way to those accusations.
Sure.
And be really clear about what is happening up there.
Mhm.
Okay. How are we gonna? So are you gonna send us a memo to the township committee, and this is something that we will address at the next township meeting?
I will let the township committee know exactly what the current situation is. I do not know anything about their expansion of premise. I think that certainly Bacone's operation in the midst of the pandemic and things like that, I can provide the committee with some additional information. However, a longtime restaurant there, Tilly's, Glenwood Diner, all of that as well. So I think there's some excellent explanation there as well.
Great, so we need some clarification around that issue. I just want to make a note that sandwich boards are allowed in the township. We passed that. When did we pass that? In 2019?
Yes.
Right, so sandwich boards are allowed in the township. I'm going to address the vision plan and the DPW site redevelopment plan. There will be so much public engagement around any of this. I just want to state that we're just starting this process, and it did come out of a publicly engaged process. So it didn't, and there was a lot of support from that, which can be read in the Perkins Eastman finalized plan. And we will continue. This is just the beginning. So no one is keeping anyone out of the loop. And we will have forums and we will get your feedback. And but there was an overwhelming response from the vision plan that people do want to see change there. So this conversation is just starting. So please just be patient with us around it. And that is my response to that. So do any of my other committee members have any responses to anything that was brought up during public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, Mr. Feld brought up, that our new executive director will be starting and his salary is more than the last executive director. So that is true. However, we're committed to staying within our budget of $215,000. There's no issue that we'll be staying within the budget. There are other, there's a marketing line item, there's a staff line item. We were not going to surpass our $215,000, and I'm committed to it. So that's not going to change. Also, there were, I think, 3 Oprah requests came in to the SID. We're between executive directors. Our new executive director will be starting at the beginning of May. We also have an attorney that's going to be advising the SID. His name is Ryan Cooper, and we have a contract in place with him. He'll be advising us. He'll be also helping us to respond professionally to Oprah requests. He's also starting at the beginning of May. In terms of these Oprah requests, we asked for an extension. That's true. But we intend on responding as soon as feasibly possible. Right now, we don't have the person in place to respond, and we want to make sure it's accurate and make sure we have the proper advice to respond accordingly.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to say? Mr. McDonald, yes.
I just want to clarify comments that were made about the permits, the business permits. In that discussion regarding the business registration, there was no discussion about eliminating business parking permits or reducing the cost. It was a matter of not having the planning board establish the number based on a presentation before the planning board that will change a year later. It was meant to be that the permitting process and purchasing process would be more fair and equitable, because businesses would be coming year after year to establish the number of permits that they need to purchase based on their operation at that time. The bus stop, I just want to be clear that will be passed by ordinance. That's established in the township's chapter 7. It will need to be passed by ordinance. However, Deputy Mayor Wasserman had reported on that, and I believe that New Jersey Transit themselves are looking at whether that bus stop can move, and will report back to the township. Lastly, there's been consistent sort of discussion about the cable franchise fees, and I just want to clarify this. The township receives a revenue based on a cable franchise agreement with Comcast. In other words, Comcast is involved in an agreement with the township to be able to operate in the township. Some townships it's Cablevision. Some townships it's different, but they pay a franchise fee based on that agreement to have a market share in Millburn Township. Therefore, it comes in as a revenue line item. There's no obligation by the township to spend that money on anything TV related. When that agreement was put in place, the township did receive grant funding through that agreement, at which time it was used to purchase TV equipment. That is how we have a TeleView system that allows us to program our channel TV 35. So I don't want it to be confused that this money that comes in as a revenue item has to be used for TV related things. It does not.
Thank you. So Thursday is Earth Day, and I just wanted to end with a quote from American cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead. And she said, Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And with that, good night, Millburn Township. Oh, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Good night. Second?
Second.
Okay, good night, everybody.